Mark Wilson's hands trembled as he read the text from his boss. Need to talk. Tonight at the celebration. After 5 years of perfect performance reviews, what could Elaine Prescott possibly need to discuss that couldn't wait until Monday? His daughter Lily tugged at his sleeve, her dance recital costume glittering under the kitchen light. Daddy, you promised you'd be there early. Mark looked between his phone and his daughter's hopeful face, unaware that in just a few hours he'd be carrying his unconscious boss through his front door, her slurred question from the morning, "Did we sleep together?" about to detonate both their careers and hearts. Before we dive into this story of one impossible choice that changed 3 lives forever, hit that like button and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this tale of midnight decisions and unexpected love travels across the world. The fluorescent lights of Coleman and Associates hummed their usual Friday evening dirge, casting harsh shadows across Mark Wilson's cluttered desk. He rubbed his eyes, the spreadsheet before him blurring into incomprehensible columns of numbers that seemed to mock his exhaustion. Quarter-end close. The 2 words that had dominated his life for the past 3 weeks. Stealing sleep, stealing time, stealing moments he could never get back with Lily. Daddy's coming home soon, sweetheart, he'd promised her that morning, watching her small face fall when he explained he had to work late again. And tomorrow night, I'll be front row at your recital, I promise. Lily had nodded, her 7-year-old wisdom already understanding that promises and reality didn't always align in their household. It's okay, Daddy. Miss Patricia says I'm the best dancer anyway. Mark smiled at the memory even as guilt twisted in his chest. Patricia Chen, their neighbor and his lifeline, had become something between a babysitter and a second mother to Lily over the past 3 years. Ever since Sarah died. He pushed the thought away, as he always did, burying it beneath layers of work and routine and the desperate need to keep moving forward. Grief was a luxury he couldn't afford, not with a daughter depending on him, not with a mortgage and medical bills that still arrived like clockwork, cruel reminders of those final 6 months watching cancer steal his wife one day at a time. Mark, you're still here. He looked up to find Jennifer Lopez, no relation, she always joked, from accounting standing in his doorway, her coat already on, weekend freedom radiating from her smile. It's past 7. Even Elaine left an hour ago. Almost done, Mark said, gesturing at his screen. Just need to reconcile these last accounts and run the variance report. Jennifer shook her head. You know there's a party tonight, right? The annual celebration, open bar, fancy appetizers, the whole 9 yards. I'm aware. Mark had deleted the calendar reminder 3 times, hoping it would somehow cease to exist. You should go, even for an hour. When's the last time you did something for yourself? Mark's laugh was hollow. I appreciate the concern, Jen, but I've got Lily's recital tomorrow night, and I need to be perfect? Jennifer interrupted gently. Mark, you're already perfect. You've exceeded every metric, delivered every project on time, and managed to raise a kid by yourself. One night at a party isn't going to derail anything. After she left, Mark sat in the silence, considering. Elaine Prescott had been good to him, exceptionally so. When Sarah got sick, Elaine had quietly arranged for him to work from home twice a week. When the hospital bills mounted, she'd personally approved a raise that HR said was outside normal parameters. When Sarah died, Elaine had attended the funeral, handed him an envelope with a check for $10,000. Not from the company, from me, and told him to take all the time he needed. He owed her, not just professionally, but humanly. Mark pulled out his phone and texted Patricia. Any chance you could watch Lily for an extra hour or 2 tonight? Company thing. I'll be home by 9 at the latest. The response came quickly. Of course. We're making friendship bracelets anyway. Lily's teaching me. Take your time. 40 minutes later, Mark stood at the entrance of the Riverside Club, feeling distinctly out of place in his rumpled dress shirt and loosened tie. Through the glass doors, he could see his colleagues transformed. Women in cocktail dresses, men in blazers, everyone laughing and drinking and existing in some carefree dimension he'd forgotten how to access. The celebration was in full swing. The company had rented the entire second floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's glittering skyline. A jazz quartet played in the corner, their smooth melodies competing with the roar of conversation and laughter. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne, and elaborate hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than Mark's weekly grocery budget. He grabbed a beer from the bar, something imported he'd never heard of, and began navigating through clusters of coworkers. Tom Bradshaw from legal was holding court near the windows, gesticulating wildly while recounting some courtroom triumph. The marketing team had commandeered the lounge area, their laughter sharp and frequent. Mark nodded at familiar faces, exchanged pleasantries, and kept moving, searching for Elaine. He found her on the balcony. Mark almost didn't recognize her at first. Elaine Prescott, the woman who wore power suits like armor and could silence a boardroom with a raised eyebrow, was leaning against the railing in jeans and a simple black sweater. Her usually impeccable hair hung loose around her shoulders, and she held a rocks glass filled with something amber that definitely wasn't her first drink of the evening. "Mr. Wilson," she said, her words slightly too precise, the way people spoke when they were working hard not to slur. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I wanted to thank you," Mark said, approaching cautiously, "for everything this quarter. I know my schedule's been complicated, and you've been incredibly understanding." Elaine waved dismissively, the gesture looser than her usual controlled movements. "You're the best analyst I have. Why would I make your life harder?" She took a long drink. "Besides, some of us understand what it's like when life doesn't cooperate with professional expectations." There was something raw in her voice, a crack in the professional veneer Mark had never heard before. He'd seen the memo 2 weeks ago, brief, clinical, distributed by HR. "Please be advised that Ms. Prescott has requested her emergency contact information be updated." Office gossip filled in the blanks. Her husband of 15 years had filed for divorce. "Are you okay?" Mark asked. Elaine laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "Define okay. I'm 43 years old, Mark. I built a career that terrifies men in boardrooms across 3 states. I can analyze a balance sheet in my sleep and negotiate contracts that make lawyers weep. But apparently I can't keep a husband interested for longer than a decade and a half." She finished her drink. "He found someone younger. Isn't that the cliché? The successful career woman whose husband strays because she was too busy being excellent at her job to be—" She gestured vaguely. "Whatever wives are supposed to be." Mark didn't know what to say. This wasn't his boss speaking. This was someone drowning, and he recognized the water because he'd been treading it himself for 3 years. "Sarah used to say that excellence was lonely," he offered quietly, "that the better you got at things, the fewer people could keep up with you." Elaine looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. "Your wife was wise." She was. Mark surprised himself by continuing. She was also stubborn and terrible at following doctor's orders, and insisted on repainting Lily's room herself even when she could barely hold a brush. His voice caught. She refused to be defined by being sick, said she'd spent too long being Sarah the wife, Sarah the mother, and she'd be damned if she'd let cancer make her just Sarah the patient. "How do you do it?" Elaine asked. "Keep going after losing someone like that?" "I don't have a choice. Lily needs me to be functional, so I'm functional. Most days that's enough." They stood in silence. 2 people who barely knew each other beyond quarterly reports and performance reviews, suddenly stripped of professional pretense by alcohol and grief, and the kind of honesty that only happens when defenses are too exhausted to maintain. "I should get back inside," Elaine said, pushing off the railing. She swayed, catching herself against the wall. "How much have you had to drink?" Mark asked. "Not enough." She started walking, her steps careful and deliberate. "Or possibly too much. The line's blurry tonight." Mark followed her inside, watching as she made her way toward the bar. Tom Bradshaw interceded first, his smile predatory in a way that made Mark's skin crawl. "Ms. Prescott! Just the woman I wanted to see. I was telling everyone about your brilliant maneuvering in the Hastings negotiation." "Not tonight, Tom," Elaine said, trying to move past him. But Tom was drunk too, drunk and oblivious, and he caught her arm. "Come on, just one drink. We should celebrate your freedom. No more ball and chain, right? You're a single woman now. Maybe we could let go of me." Elaine's voice was cold, but her body was unsteady. Mark moved without thinking. "She said let go." Tom's eyes narrowed. "Wilson, didn't know you and the boss were so close." The implication was ugly. "We're not." Mark said evenly. But I know when someone said no. For a moment, the situation teetered on the edge of something ugly. Then Tom released Elaine's arm, raised his hands in mock surrender. Whatever, man. Plenty of fish. He walked away, already scanning for easier prey. Elaine closed her eyes. I need to leave. Let me call you a car, Mark said. No, can't go home. Movers are there packing Michael's things. Agreed to stay away tonight while they do it. She laughed bitterly. 15 years reduced to boxes. I rented a hotel room, but She swayed again. I can't remember which hotel. Mark's phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Lily's asking when you'll be home. Told her soon. Everything okay? He looked at Elaine, his boss, yes, but also a person in crisis, alone and too drunk to make good decisions in a room full of colleagues who'd gossip about any misstep for months. He thought about Sarah, about the night she'd been too weak to make it to the bathroom by herself, about dignity and what it meant to be someone who helped when helping was needed. You can't stay here, he said, and you can't drive. Do you have anyone I can call? A friend? Family? Elaine's silence was answer enough. Mark texted Patricia. Something came up, going to be later than I thought. Midnight at the latest. I'm so sorry. The response? No problem at all. We're having a great time. See you when you see you. Come on, Mark said to Elaine. I'm taking you home. You don't have to. I know. Come on anyway. Getting Elaine out of the Riverside Club was an exercise in discretion. Mark supported her with an arm around her waist, moving quickly through the party, deflecting questions with vague explanations about her not feeling well. A few knowing looks followed them, but Mark ignored them. Let them think what they wanted. He knew the truth. The November air was sharp, sobering. Elaine breathed deeply, some of the fog lifting from her eyes. Your car? This way. His Honda Civic was a far cry from Elaine's Mercedes, littered with Lily's forgotten toys and coloring books. Elaine didn't comment, just settled carefully into the passenger seat while Mark cleared a stuffed unicorn from her space. Where to? He asked, starting the engine. Elaine gave him an address for a hotel downtown. Mark plugged it into his GPS and pulled out of the parking lot, hyper-aware of his speed, his following distance, every traffic law he'd ever learned. The last thing he needed was to get pulled over with his drunk boss in the passenger seat. They drove in silence for a few minutes before Elaine spoke. You didn't have to do this. I know. You had somewhere else to be, someone waiting. Lily's fine. She's with our neighbor. Still, Elaine leaned her head against the window. Most people would have walked away, especially from their boss. Too complicated, too risky. Mark navigated a turn, considering. My wife spent her last 6 months dependent on other people for everything. Eating, bathing, using the bathroom, all the things that make you human, she needed help with. You know what the worst part was? Not the physical stuff. It was watching her lose her dignity piece by piece, seeing the humiliation in her eyes when she needed help with something basic. He stopped at a red light, staring at the empty intersection. The people who helped without making her feel diminished, who treated her like she was still Sarah and not just a collection of needs, those people gave her something more valuable than the physical assistance. They gave her the gift of remaining herself even when her body was failing. I'm not dying, Elaine said quietly. No, but you're in pain, and you're vulnerable, and you need help. That's enough. The hotel appeared ahead, its bright lights promising anonymity and soft beds. Mark pulled into the circular drive, put the car in park. Which hotel was it? Elaine stared at the building. I don't think this is it. What do you mean? The one I booked had a red sign. This is blue. She fumbled for her phone, squinting at the screen. I can't read my confirmation email. Letters are swimming. Mark felt something tighten in his chest. Okay, do you remember anything else? The name? Something with grand in it? Or garden? God, I'm pathetic. She dropped her phone in her lap. I'm the CFO of a mid-sized corporation. I manage budgets in the millions, and I can't remember where I booked a hotel room. You're drunk and stressed and going through a divorce, Mark said. You're human. It happens. He pulled out his own phone, started searching hotels nearby. The Grand Mariposa? Garden District Hotel? The Grand View? Elaine closed her eyes. I don't know, maybe. They all sound right and wrong at the same time. Mark's phone buzzed again. Patricia, Lily's getting sleepy. Should I put her down in the guest room? He looked at the time. 10:47. So much for being home by 9. Tell you what, he said to Elaine, let's drive around. Maybe you'll recognize it when you see it. For the next 20 minutes, they cruised through downtown, Mark pointing out every hotel they passed while Elaine squinted and shook her head. The alcohol, combined with her emotional exhaustion, was making her less coherent by the minute. She'd started crying silently somewhere around the third hotel, tears sliding down her cheeks while she stared out the window. I don't want to go to a hotel anyway, she finally said. I don't want to be alone in some sterile room knowing my husband is probably already with her, that everything we built is being dismantled and distributed like assets in a corporate dissolution. Mark pulled into a parking lot, turned off the engine. This was the moment where he should call someone. Another colleague, a friend of Elaine's, someone better equipped to handle a crisis that was rapidly evolving beyond his capacity to manage. But who? He didn't know her personal life, didn't have access to her contacts, and she was in no state to provide guidance. Where do you live? Elaine asked suddenly. About 20 minutes from here. Why? Do you have a couch? Mark's mind raced through the implications. His boss, drunk, spending the night at his house. The professional boundaries being demolished. The potential for misunderstanding, for gossip, for HR nightmares. Then he thought about Elaine alone in a hotel room she couldn't remember booking, crying over a marriage that had imploded, with no one to call and nowhere to go. Sarah's voice echoed in his memory. We help when we can help. That's what makes us human instead of just biological machines taking up space. Yeah, Mark said. I have a couch. The drive to his house felt surreal. Elaine had stopped crying but sat motionless, staring at nothing. Mark texted Patricia. Just pulled up, coming to get Lily. Thank you so much. His house was small but tidy, a 2-bedroom bungalow in a neighborhood that had seen better days but was slowly gentrifying. The front porch light glowed welcome, and through the window Mark could see Patricia and Lily on the couch, the tail end of an animated movie playing on the TV. Wait here for just a minute, he told Elaine. Let me get my daughter settled. Patricia met him at the door, Lily drowsy in her arms. Everything okay? She asked, her eyes sharp with concern. Work emergency, Mark said, taking Lily, who immediately nestled into his shoulder. My boss, she's going through some personal stuff and needed help. She's going to crash on our couch tonight. Patricia's eyebrows rose, but she was diplomatic enough not to comment. All right, call if you need anything. Mark carried Lily to her bedroom, its walls still the soft purple Sarah had insisted on painting. He tucked her in, kissed her forehead, whispered, Daddy loves you. Love you too, Daddy, she mumbled, already mostly asleep. Tomorrow's my recital. I know, sweetheart. I'll be there, front row, promise. Back outside, Elaine was leaning against his car, looking small and lost in a way that seemed impossible for someone who commanded boardrooms. If this is too weird, just say so. I can figure something out. It's fine, Mark said. Come inside. His living room was cluttered with the evidence of single parenthood. Lily's homework spread across the coffee table, a basket of unfolded laundry on the armchair, toys in corners waiting to be tripped over. Mark felt suddenly self-conscious about the modest space, so different from the elegant home Elaine surely came from, but Elaine didn't seem to notice or care. She sat carefully on the couch, her hands folded in her lap like a child trying to be good. I'll get you some water and aspirin, Mark said, and a blanket. Bathroom's down the hall if you need it. He busied himself gathering supplies. A tall glass of water, 4 aspirin, his warmest blanket, a spare pillow from his closet. When he returned, Elaine was crying again, silent tears that she didn't bother wiping away. Hey, Mark said softly, setting everything on the coffee table. It's going to be okay. How do you know? Her voice was raw. I don't, but I know you're strong enough to survive it. He sat in the armchair, maintaining a respectful distance. Look, I'm not going to pretend I understand what you're going through. Divorce and death aren't the same, but I know what it's like when your life implodes, when everything you thought was permanent turns out to be temporary. And I know that even when it feels impossible, you keep breathing, keep moving, and eventually, not quickly, but eventually, It hurts a little less. Elaine wiped her eyes. Michael said I loved my job more than I loved him. And maybe he was right. Maybe I did. But it wasn't because the job mattered more. It was because the job was the one thing I could control. I could work harder, be smarter, deliver better results, and see clear outcomes. Marriage isn't like that. You can give everything and still fail. Or your partner can give up, Mark said. Failure takes two people. Success takes two people. But only one person can decide to quit. They sat in silence, the house settling around them with familiar creaks and sighs. Somewhere down the hall, Lily's nightlight cast a soft glow. Take the aspirin, Mark said finally. Drink all the water. The blanket's there when you're ready to sleep. I'm going to be in my room if you need anything. Mark? Elaine's voice stopped him at the hallway. Thank you for not being like Tom, for not taking advantage. You don't have to thank me for basic decency, he said. Get some rest. In his bedroom, Mark sat on the edge of his bed, his head in his hands, trying to process the evening. His boss was sleeping on his couch. He'd promised Lily he'd be home by 9, and it was now past midnight. Tomorrow was her recital, and he needed to be functional, present, the father she deserved. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Elaine's tear-stained face, heard the brokenness in her voice, and knew he'd made the only choice his conscience would allow. Sarah would have done the same. She'd have brought Elaine home, made her tea, sat with her through the worst of it. I hope I'm doing this right, he whispered to the empty room, to Sarah's ghost, to whatever version of himself still knew how to be good when being good was complicated. Sleep came eventually, thin and restless, punctuated by dreams of spreadsheets and dance recitals and amber liquid in crystal glasses. Mark woke at 6:30 to the sound of movement in his living room. He pulled on sweatpants and a t-shirt, ran a hand through his hair, and steeled himself for whatever awkwardness the morning would bring. Elaine was sitting upright on the couch, the blanket folded neatly beside her, her hair disheveled and her mascara smudged. She looked at him with an expression that cycled rapidly through confusion, recognition, and dawning horror. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "My house. You... Why am I at your house?" She stood quickly, swayed, sat back down. Oh God, what happened last night? Mark's stomach dropped as he realized what she was thinking. Nothing happened. You were drunk at the party, you couldn't remember which hotel you'd booked, and you needed somewhere safe to stay. I offered my couch. Elaine's hands were shaking. She looked around the room, the toys, the family photos on the mantel, the children's drawings stuck to the refrigerator visible through the kitchen doorway. Her eyes landed on him, searching his face for truth. "Did we—" she started, couldn't finish. "No," Mark said firmly. "Absolutely not. You slept on the couch. I slept in my room. Nothing inappropriate happened." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." Elaine buried her face in her hands. "I don't remember leaving the party. I don't remember getting here. I don't remember anything after Tom grabbed my arm." Her voice rose with panic. "What if someone saw us leave together? What if people think—" "Then they're wrong," Mark interrupted. "Elaine, look at me." She did, her eyes red-rimmed and afraid. "Nothing happened," he repeated. "You needed help. I helped. That's the whole story. The whole story that could destroy both our careers if anyone decides to interpret it differently." She stood again, more carefully this time. "I need to leave. Where's my purse? My phone?" "On the side table, but you should eat something first. Drink more water." "I should disappear before your daughter wakes up and sees her father with some strange woman." "Daddy?" They both froze. Lily stood in the hallway, still in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed elephant, her eyes moving between Mark and Elaine with 7-year-old curiosity. "Hey, sweetheart," Mark said, his voice carefully normal. "You're up early." "Who's that?" Lily asked, pointing at Elaine. "This is Ms. Prescott. She works with Daddy. She wasn't feeling well last night, so she stayed on our couch." Lily processed this with the adaptability of children. "Are you sick? Daddy makes really good chicken soup when I'm sick." Elaine's expression softened slightly. "I'm feeling better, thank you." "That's good?" Lily turned to Mark. "Is today my recital?" "Tonight, yes. 6 o'clock. I'll be there front row, remember?" "Can Miss Prescott come too?" Mark felt his face heat. Oh, I don't think I'd love to, Elaine said, surprising them both. But I have other plans. Maybe next time. Okay, Lily said, accepting this with easy grace. I'm hungry. Can we have pancakes? Sure thing. Go wash your face and brush your teeth. After Lily bounded back down the hall, Elaine stood, gathering her things. I should go. Let me at least call you a car. I'll manage. She paused at the door, turned back. Mark, thank you. I know this was beyond anything you signed up for when you came to work for me. It's fine, really. It's not fine. It's exceptional and potentially really complicated. She met his eyes. On Monday, we're going to pretend this never happened. We're going to be completely professional, because if we're not, if there's even a hint of impropriety, we both know what HR will assume. I understand. Do you? Elaine's voice was sharp. Because I'm the boss. If this gets twisted, you're the victim, and I'm the predator who took advantage. My career ends, probably my freedom if you decided to press charges for something I can't even remember not doing. I would never... I know, but the world doesn't care about intentions. It cares about optics. She opened the door. Thank you for your kindness, but we can't do this again. Then she was gone, the door closing behind her with a soft click that sounded like an ending. Mark stood in his living room, surrounded by the evidence of his normal life, trying to reconcile what had just happened. He'd done the right thing. He was certain of that. But Elaine's fear, her panic at the possibilities, her immediate need to establish distance, it all pointed to a truth he'd somehow missed while being helpful. Kindness between a male subordinate and a female boss carried weight that kindness between equals never would. Daddy? Lily appeared again, toothbrush in hand. Are you making pancakes? Yes, sweetheart, Mark said, pushing aside the morning's strangeness. With chocolate chips, just how you like them. As he mixed batter and listened to Lily chatter about her dance routine, Mark tried to convince himself that Elaine was right. On Monday, they'd return to professional normalcy, and last night would fade into forgettable history. But he couldn't shake the image of her face when she'd asked if they'd slept together. The genuine terror in her eyes at what her blackout might have allowed, at how vulnerable she'd been. And he couldn't forget the way she'd looked at Lily, that moment of softness before the walls came back up. Outside, the November morning was gray and cold, promising rain. Mark flipped pancakes and poured juice and helped Lily pick out her recital outfit, performing the routines of parenthood that had become his anchor. But in the back of his mind, a question lingered. What happened when doing the right thing created exactly the wrong kind of complication? And what did it mean that he couldn't quite bring himself to regret it? The pancakes turned out perfect, golden brown with chocolate chips melting into sweet pools. Lily devoured 3, her excitement about the evening's recital bubbling over in a stream of consciousness about costumes and choreography and how nervous excited she felt. Mark smiled and nodded and made encouraging sounds, but his mind kept circling back to Elaine's expression as she'd fled his house, the way her hands had shaken when she'd asked that terrible question. By the time he'd cleaned the breakfast dishes and helped Lily practice her routine one more time, the morning had settled into something approaching normalcy. Patricia knocked at 10, as promised, ready to take Lily for the day so Mark could run errands and prepare for the recital. He watched them walk down the sidewalk together, Lily skipping and chattering, and felt the familiar pang of gratitude for neighbors who became family when blood relatives were too distant or dead to help. His phone buzzed as their figures disappeared around the corner, a text from an unknown number. This is Elaine, got your number from the employee directory. I apologize for leaving so abruptly this morning. Thank you again for your help last night. I've transferred $500 to your account to cover any inconvenience or expenses. Please consider the matter closed. Mark stared at the message, something hot and uncomfortable rising in his chest. He typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on, no payment necessary. Glad you got home safe. See you Monday. The response came immediately. I insist, it's already done. Professional boundaries require it. He wanted to argue, to explain that you couldn't pay someone for basic human decency, that reducing last night to a transaction felt wrong on levels he couldn't quite articulate. But Elaine had been clear about needing distance, about the dangers of this being interpreted as anything other than a closed incident. So he typed, understood, and put his phone away. The rest of Saturday passed in the pleasant chaos of preparing for a 7-year-old's big night. Mark pressed Lily's costume, made sure her dance shoes were clean, charged his phone and camera so he could capture every moment. He tried not to think about Elaine, about the money now sitting in his account like evidence of something tawdry, about the way professional boundaries could make kindness feel transactional. The recital was everything Lily had promised, and more. She danced with fierce concentration, her small body executing each move with precision that made Mark's throat tight. He filmed the whole thing from his front row seat, shouted encouragement, and afterwards presented her with the bouquet of daisies he'd bought, her favorite flower, the one Sarah had loved too. "You were perfect," he told her, lifting her up despite her growing weight. "The best dancer on that stage." "Madison fell during the leap sequence," Lily said seriously. "But I didn't. I remembered everything." "You were magnificent." Driving home, with Lily drowsy in the back seat still clutching her flowers, Mark felt something close to contentment. This was his life, these small, perfect moments with his daughter, the ordinary joy of watching her grow and succeed. Last night's strangeness already felt distant, like something that had happened to a different person. Sunday arrived quiet and cold, the promised rain finally making good on its threat. Mark and Lily spent the day inside, building elaborate blanket forts and watching movies and making cookies that came out slightly burned but tasted perfect with milk. Normal. Safe. His. But Monday morning brought a return to reality that Mark felt in his bones before his alarm even sounded. He dressed carefully in his best suit, the one he saved for important meetings, though he couldn't have explained why today felt like it required armor. Lily noticed, commenting that he looked fancy, and he'd laughed and told her he had a big presentation. Not entirely a lie. The office felt different. Mark told himself he was imagining it, that nothing had actually changed, but he couldn't shake the sensation of eyes following him as he walked to his desk. Jennifer, from accounting, smiled her usual morning greeting. Tom Bradshaw barely glanced up from his phone, and the Monday morning routines proceeded exactly as they always did. Until Elaine arrived. She swept through the office at 8:30 sharp, her usual composed self in a charcoal suit and heels that clicked authority with each step. Her hair was back in its customary perfect twist, her makeup flawless, her expression neutral and professional. She made eye contact with Mark for exactly 1 second as she passed his desk, the briefest acknowledgement before continuing to her corner office. The message was clear. Friday night had never happened. Mark threw himself into work, grateful for the distraction of spreadsheets and reports and the comfortable logic of numbers that always balanced if you found the right formula. He ate lunch at his desk, declined an invitation to join some colleagues for coffee, and stayed focused on being exactly what he'd always been: competent, reliable, and visible in the best way. At 3 o'clock, his desk phone rang. Elaine's extension. "Mark Wilson," he answered, his voice professionally neutral. "Mr. Wilson, this is Ms. Prescott. Could you bring the Q4 projections to my office? I'd like to review them before tomorrow's board meeting." "Of course, I'll be right there." His hands were steady as he gathered the relevant files, his expression calm as he walked the familiar path to Elaine's office. This was work. Just work. She was on a call when he arrived, gesturing for him to enter while she wrapped up a conversation about vendor contracts. Her office was all windows and minimalism, with a view of the city that had probably cost the company a fortune. Mark had been here dozens of times for legitimate business purposes. This was no different, except it was, and they both knew it. "Close the door, please," Elaine said after ending her call. Mark's stomach tightened, but he complied, staying near the door while she reviewed the projections he'd laid on her desk. "These look good," she said after a moment. "The variance analysis is particularly thorough." "Thank you." Silence stretched between them, professional and careful, and weighted with everything they weren't saying. "Mark," Elaine said finally, her eyes still on the papers, "we need to address Friday night. I thought we were pretending it didn't happen. Professionally, yes, but practically, we need to be on the same page." She looked up, her expression controlled, but her eyes tired. "Did you deposit the money I sent?" "No. I can return it if you'd like." "I'd prefer you keep it. It maintains appropriate boundaries." "It makes me feel like a hired service," Mark said, the words escaping before he could stop them. Like I helped you for money instead of because it was the right thing to do. Elaine's jaw tightened. I understand that. But accepting money for a service is clean, clear. It doesn't leave room for misinterpretation or future complications. Is that what we're worried about? Future complications? Yes. She stood, walked to her window, her back to him. Mark, you're an excellent analyst, and from what I observed, a good father and a decent person. But I'm your boss. I have power over your career, your livelihood, your ability to support your daughter. Any relationship between us beyond professional is automatically suspect because of that power dynamic. I'm not interested in you romantically, Mark said, keeping his voice level. I helped you because you needed help. That's all. I believe you. I do. But it doesn't matter what we believe. It matters what it looks like. And a male employee taking his drunk female boss home, having her spend the night at his house, then receiving money from her afterwards. She turned to face him. If anyone wanted to create a narrative, we've handed them all the pieces. Mark felt cold realization wash over him. You're worried I'll use this against you. I'm worried that you could, even if you never would. I'm worried that someone else might find out and use it against both of us. I'm worried that I made myself vulnerable in front of a subordinate, and now I have to live with the uncertainty of how that vulnerability might come back to haunt me. So what do you want from me? Mark asked. A signed statement that nothing happened? An NDA? I want us to be extremely professional going forward. No personal conversations, no closed-door meetings unless absolutely necessary, and preferably with a third party present. I want clear, documented business interactions that leave no room for speculation. That's going to be difficult when we work together daily. I know. Elaine's voice softened slightly. But it's necessary. For both our protection. Mark wanted to argue, to point out the absurdity of treating human kindness like a liability, but he also understood her fear, had seen enough harassment cases and wrongful termination lawsuits to know that protecting yourself often meant building walls that shouldn't need to exist. Understood, he said. Is there anything else you need regarding the projections? Relief flickered across Elaine's face. No, thank you, Mr. Wilson. He left, closing the door carefully behind him, and returned to his desk with the distinct feeling that he'd just agreed to something that would make his job much more difficult. The following weeks proved him right. Elaine maintained rigid professionalism, communicating primarily through email even when a 30-second conversation would have been more efficient. When face-to-face interaction was unavoidable, she kept Jennifer or another colleague present, turning simple check-ins into formal meetings. Mark followed her lead, responding to her formality with his own, and tried not to think about how much energy they were both expending to maintain boundaries that had never needed policing before. Thanksgiving came and went. Mark and Lily spent it with Patricia and her family, grateful for the invitation that meant they didn't have to face the holiday alone. Lily made construction paper turkeys at school and chattered about the Christmas pageant she'd been cast in. Life continued in its comfortable patterns. At work, year-end closing consumed everyone's attention. Mark worked late most nights, occasionally crossing paths with Elaine, who also kept brutal hours. They'd nod to each other in the empty office, two people burning midnight oil for a company that would replace them both without hesitation if the numbers demanded it. Sometimes Mark wondered if she was avoiding going home to an empty house the same way he sometimes dragged out his work to delay returning to rooms that still echoed with Sarah's absence. The company Christmas party arrived the second week of December. Mark had no intention of attending, had already prepared his excuse about Lily's pageant rehearsal, when Jennifer appeared at his desk with her coat on and determination in her eyes. "You're coming," she announced. "I really can't—" "Yes, you can. Patricia already texted me that she's got Lily for the evening. Nice try." Mark stared at her. "You two are conspiring against me?" "We're concerned about you. You work, you parent, and that's it. When's the last time you did something social?" "I'm social. With adults. Who aren't me or Patricia." Mark couldn't actually remember. "I'm fine, Jen." "You're functional. There's a difference." She softened slightly. "Look, I get it. After everything with Sarah, it's easier to just shut down the parts of yourself that aren't absolutely necessary for survival. But that's not living, Mark. That's just not dying." The words hit harder than she probably intended. Mark looked at his computer screen, at the spreadsheet he'd been staring at for the past hour without actually processing, and realized she was right. He'd been treading water for 3 years, keeping his head above the surface, but never actually swimming anywhere. 1 hour, he said. I'll stay for 1 hour. The party was at the same venue as the November celebration, though this time decorated within an inch of its life with garland and lights and a tree that probably cost more than Mark's car. The turnout was larger, with people bringing spouses and partners, the atmosphere more festive than the drunken desperation of the fall event. Mark nursed a beer and made conversation with colleagues he normally only emailed, discovering that Tom from legal had just become a grandfather and that the quiet woman from HR had run a marathon last month. Normal people with normal lives, existing in dimensions beyond the office he'd never bothered to explore. He didn't see Elaine until she appeared beside him at the dessert table, reaching for the same piece of chocolate cake. Their hands collided, and they both pulled back as if burned. "Sorry," Mark said. "It's fine. You take it." "No, please. I shouldn't anyway. Lily says I'm getting a dad belly." Elaine's smile was brief but genuine. "Lily sounds honest." "Brutally so." Mark gestured to the cake. "It's all yours." He started to walk away, maintaining the distance they'd so carefully constructed, when Elaine said his name. "Not Mr. Wilson. Mark." He turned. "How is she?" Elaine asked. "Lily, how was her recital?" "Perfect. She didn't fall during the leap sequence, which was apparently a major victory." "I'm glad." Elaine hesitated, then added, "I thought about what she said, about inviting me to watch her dance. It was kind. She's a kind kid. She gets it from somewhere." The moment stretched between them, people swirling around them in holiday cheer, and Mark felt the rigid professionalism of the past weeks crack slightly. Just two people having a normal conversation at a Christmas party. Nothing inappropriate about it. "How are you doing?" he asked quietly. "With everything?" Elaine's expression shuddered. "Fine. The divorce is proceeding, very cordial, very efficient, like dismantling a corporation." "That sounds awful." "It is what it is." She picked up the cake, not meeting his eyes. "I should get back to my date." Mark felt surprise flash through him. "You brought someone?" "Jennifer set me up. Fellow divorcee, very nice, completely boring." She smiled without humor. "But it looks good to show up with someone, you know? Sends the message that I'm moving forward." Before Mark could respond, a man appeared at Elaine's elbow, tall, silver-haired, expensive suit. "There you are. I was beginning to think you'd abandoned me." "Just getting dessert. Mark Wilson, this is David Hendricks." "David, Mark is one of my analysts." They shook hands, David's grip just slightly too firm, his smile just slightly too possessive as he placed a hand on Elaine's lower back. Mark recognized the performance of it, the way David was marking territory, and felt an unexpected surge of irritation. "Good to meet you," Mark said. "Elaine speaks highly of the whole team." "I'm sure she does. She lives for this company." David's tone made it sound like criticism. "Shall we go, darling? I promised we'd make an appearance at the Harrisons' party by 9. Elaine's smile was practiced. "Of course." "Good night, Mark." Mark watched them leave, David's hand still proprietary on Elaine's back, her posture stiff in a way that suggested she was enduring rather than enjoying. He tried to tell himself it was none of his business, that Elaine's dating life had nothing to do with him. "That looked painful," Jennifer said, appearing with fresh drinks. "What?" "Watching your boss with that pompous ass. David Hendricks is a partner at Klein & Associates. Divorced 3 times, known for dating successful women and then spending their money." "Not my concern." "Right. Which is why you're clutching that beer bottle like you want to strangle it." Jennifer studied him. "You like her." "She's my boss." That wasn't a denial. Mark took a long drink. "I helped her one time when she needed it. That doesn't mean anything." "Doesn't it?" Jennifer's voice was gentle. "Mark, I've known you for 5 years. I watched you with Sarah, saw how devoted you were. And since she died, you've been this closed-off version of yourself, just going through motions. But when you talk about Elaine, even when you're trying not to talk about her, there's something there, something alive. You're reading too much into it. Maybe. Or maybe you're reading too little. She touched his arm. I'm not saying you should act on it. I'm just saying maybe you should acknowledge that you're capable of feeling something beyond responsibility and grief. Mark wanted to argue, but the words stuck in his throat. Because Jennifer was right, and he'd been avoiding that truth since the morning Elaine had fled his house. He'd thought about her more in the past month than was strictly professional. He'd noticed when she looked tired, when she skipped lunch, when her carefully maintained composure slipped for just a moment. He'd been aware of her in ways that had nothing to do with quarterly reports. It doesn't matter, he said finally. Even if I did feel something, which I'm not confirming, she's made it very clear that any relationship beyond professional is impossible. Impossible or just complicated? With her, there's no difference. Jennifer nodded slowly. Well, for what it's worth, I think David Hendricks is completely wrong for her. And I think you helped her that night because you're a good person. But I also think maybe helping her felt different than helping anyone else would have. She left him with that thought, drifting back to her husband who'd been cornered by Tom Bradshaw and was making desperate eye contact for rescue. Mark stood alone with his beer and his uncomfortable revelations, watching the party swirl around him. His phone buzzed. Patricia. Lily wants to know if you can bring home some of those fancy cookies they always have at your work parties. She remembers them from the family day last year. Mark smiled, the simple request grounding him. This was real. Lily waiting at home, wanting cookies, needing her father to show up and be present. Whatever complicated feelings he might or might not have about his boss were irrelevant compared to that fundamental truth. He texted back, "Already grabbed some. Be home in 20 minutes." As he gathered cookies into a napkin and prepared to leave, Mark caught one last glimpse of Elaine through the crowd. She was laughing at something David had said, her hand on his arm, performing the role of a woman having a wonderful time. But her eyes were empty, and Mark recognized that performance because he'd been giving the same one for 3 years. Present, but not actually there, going through motions of normalcy while something essential remained locked away. The cold air outside was a relief. Mark walked to his car, cookies carefully protected, and tried to convince himself that Jennifer was wrong, that what he felt was just residual concern from helping someone in crisis, nothing more significant than that. But driving home through streets decorated with Christmas lights, passing houses warm with family gatherings, Mark couldn't quite silence the small voice suggesting that maybe, just maybe, he'd been sleepwalking through his own life, and Elaine's unexpected crisis had been the alarm clock he didn't know he needed. Lily was waiting on the couch in her pajamas when he arrived, Patricia reading to her from a picture book. She launched herself at Mark with 7-year-old enthusiasm, immediately demanding the promised cookies. "How was the party?" Patricia asked, gathering her things. "Fine, the usual corporate thing. Did you have fun?" Mark considered the question. The conversations with colleagues, the unexpected connection with Elaine, David Hendricks' proprietary hand, Jennifer's uncomfortable observations. "I think maybe I had something more complicated than fun." Patricia laughed. "That's very honest. Well, complicated is better than nothing. You've been doing nothing for a while now." After she left, Mark sat with Lily on the couch, letting her chatter about her day while they split the fancy cookies. She fell asleep against his shoulder halfway through a story about her friend Madison's new puppy, and Mark carried her to bed, tucking her in with the practiced efficiency of single parenthood. In his own room, getting ready for bed, Mark caught sight of himself in the mirror. When had he gotten so much gray? When had the lines around his eyes become permanent? He looked like someone who'd been surviving instead of living, weathering storms instead of enjoying sunshine. Sarah's photo sat on his nightstand, the last good one before the cancer made her unrecognizable. She was laughing, head thrown back, joy radiating from every pixel. He picked it up, studying her face, trying to remember what that kind of unburdened happiness felt like. "I don't know what I'm doing," he told her picture, feeling foolish but needing to say it out loud. "Jennifer thinks I have feelings for my boss." Which is insane, right? Elaine and I barely know each other. One night doesn't change that. Sarah's frozen smile offered no advice. "But she's right that I've been shut down. I know that. I just don't know how to be any other way anymore." He set the photo back carefully. "And even if I wanted to be, even if there was something there,
Elaine's made it clear she needs distance, so it doesn't matter what I feel or don't feel. He climbed into bed, turned off the light, and lay in the darkness trying to sort through emotions he'd spent years successfully avoiding. The truth was, he did feel something when he thought about Elaine. Not just concern or professional respect, but something warmer, more complicated, more alive than anything he'd experienced since Sarah's death. And that terrified him, because caring about someone meant risking loss again. It meant opening himself to the possibility of more pain, more grief, more empty spaces where a person used to be. He'd barely survived losing Sarah. He couldn't imagine choosing to put himself in a position where he might have to survive losing someone else. Better to stay numb. Better to keep things professional and distant and safe. His phone lit up with an email notification. He almost ignored it, but the sender made him look. Elaine Prescott. The subject line was empty. The message consisted of 3 words. Thank you again. Mark stared at it, trying to decipher meaning from such sparse communication. Thank you for what? For maintaining distance? For not making things awkward at the party? For that night weeks ago that they were both pretending hadn't happened? He typed and deleted 5 responses before settling on, "You're welcome." Her reply came immediately, as if she'd been waiting. "David left early. I'm home alone with very expensive wine and the realization that I'm terrible at dating. How do people do this?" Mark's heart rate picked up. This was personal. This was Elaine dropping the professional barrier, reaching out in the kind of vulnerable honesty they'd agreed to avoid. He should shut it down, maintain the boundaries, be the responsible one. Instead, he wrote, "I have no idea. I haven't dated since college. Sarah and I met freshman year." That must have been nice. Knowing someone was your person before you accumulated all your damage. We accumulated damage together. It's different, but not easier. I'm drunk again. Not falling down drunk, but honest drunk. I should probably stop emailing my employee. Probably. A long pause. Then, I lied earlier. David isn't boring. He's perfectly fine. The problem is me. I sat across from him at dinner and felt nothing. Not attraction, not curiosity, not even mild interest. Just performance. Pretending to be someone capable of normal human connection. Mark's fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was dangerous territory. The kind of conversation that could make Monday morning unbearable. But something in Elaine's words resonated with his own experience so deeply that he couldn't not respond. I understand that feeling. I perform being fine all the time. For Lily, for colleagues, for the world. Sometimes I perform so well I almost believe it myself. Does it get easier, the performing? No, but you get better at it. That's depressing. Yeah. Another pause, longer this time. Mark watched the screen, wondering if she'd realized the risk of this conversation and retreated back to safety. Then, "Good night, Mark. See you Monday." "Good night, Elaine." Mark set his phone down, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with stress and everything to do with connection. They'd just crossed a line, he and Elaine. Not a physical one, not even particularly inappropriate one, but an honest one, the kind that made pretending nothing existed between them exponentially harder. He should regret it, should already be composing the email that would reestablish boundaries and make clear this couldn't happen again. But lying in the darkness, Mark discovered something surprising. He didn't regret it at all. Monday morning arrived with freezing rain that turned the drive to work into a careful negotiation of black ice and nervous brake lights. Mark dropped Lily at school, watching her race through the downpour with her backpack bouncing, then sat in his car for 5 full minutes trying to prepare himself for whatever awaited at the office. The weekend emails hung between him and Elaine like evidence of a crime they'd both committed. He'd reread them Sunday morning, searching for some way to interpret the exchange as purely professional and finding none. She'd been vulnerable. He'd been honest. They'd connected in ways that made the rigid boundaries of the past month feel performative and exhausting. But what did that mean for today? For the months ahead? For the impossible situation of a subordinate and his boss who'd somehow become something other than their job titles defined? The office was subdued when Mark arrived, people moving slowly through Monday morning rituals while rain hammered against the windows. He settled at his desk, pulled up his email, and found a message waiting from Elaine, time-stamped at 6:15 that morning.
Team meeting at 9 to review year-end numbers, conference room B. Your presence required. Professional, distant, exactly what it should be. Mark told himself the small disappointment he felt was ridiculous. The morning passed in familiar rhythms, emails, spreadsheets, a brief call with a vendor about invoice discrepancies. At 8:50, Mark gathered his laptop and the year-end reports, mentally preparing for the meeting. Jennifer caught his eye as he passed her desk, raising her eyebrows in a question he pretended not to understand. Conference room B was already filling when he arrived. Tom Bradshaw dominated one end of the table, regaling two younger analysts with a story about his grandson's basketball prowess. The marketing director sat scrolling through her phone, and several members of the accounting team clustered near the coffee station, comparing notes about their holiday plans. Elaine entered at precisely 9 o'clock, her presence immediately commanding attention without her having to say a word. She wore navy today, her hair pulled back severely, her expression all business. She didn't look at Mark specifically as she took her seat at the head of the table, didn't acknowledge him any differently than she acknowledged anyone else. "Let's get started," she said, pulling up a presentation on the screen. "We have a lot to cover, and I'd like to be efficient about it." For the next 90 minutes, Elaine walked them through the year-end financials with her characteristic precision, asking pointed questions and accepting nothing less than thorough answers. Mark presented his variance analysis, fielded her inquiries about certain assumptions, and watched her process information with the kind of sharp intelligence that had probably intimidated her ex-husband. The meeting was breaking up, people gathering papers and checking phones, when Elaine said, "Mark, could you stay for a moment? I have some questions about the Q1 forecast you submitted." His stomach tightened, but he nodded, remaining seated while the others filed out. Jennifer shot him a look on her way past, concern mixed with curiosity, but said nothing. The door clicked shut. Elaine waited until the footsteps faded before speaking. "I'm sorry about Friday night," she said, her voice low. "The emails. That was inappropriate." "It's fine." "It's not fine. I was drinking and feeling sorry for myself, and I used you as an emotional support system when you're my employee. That's a violation of the boundaries we specifically agreed to maintain." Mark set down his pen carefully. "Elaine, you sent a few honest emails. You didn't ask me for anything inappropriate. You didn't put me in an uncomfortable position." "Didn't I?" She finally met his eyes. "Because I've been thinking about it all weekend, and I realized I keep doing this. I keep putting you in situations where you can't say no because of the power dynamic. That night at the party when I ended up at your house, you couldn't just leave me there, even though it complicated your life. Friday's emails. You couldn't not respond because I'm your boss. I'm using my position without meaning to, and that's not okay. You're not using anything. I chose to help you that night. I chose to respond to your emails. Those were my decisions." "Were they? Or did you just feel obligated because I sign your paychecks?" Mark felt frustration rise. "You're not giving me much credit here. I'm capable of making my own choices." "Are you?" Elaine's voice sharpened. "Because from where I'm sitting, every interaction we've had outside of pure business has been initiated by me in moments of weakness, and you've responded because you're a good person who helps people. But that doesn't mean you wanted to be in those situations. It doesn't mean I haven't been taking advantage. Taking advantage would be if you'd asked me to do something actually inappropriate. You got drunk and needed a safe place to sleep. You sent some honest emails late at night. Those are just human things, Elaine. They're not crimes. They are when there's a power imbalance." She stood, walked to the window, her back to him. "I've been the victim of power imbalances before. A boss who made comments about my appearance, who found reasons to touch my shoulder or stand too close. A professor in graduate school who suggested my grade might improve if I was friendlier. I know what it feels like to be on the receiving end of someone using their position, and I swore I would never be that person." Mark heard the pain in her voice, the history she was revealing. "You're not that person. What those people did to you was predatory. You've never been anything but professional with me." "Until I wasn't." She turned to face him. "Until I showed up drunk at a company party and ended up spending the night at your house. Until I sent you personal emails about my failed date and my inability to connect with people. Those weren't professional, Mark. Those were me being weak and lonely and using the one person who'd shown me kindness. So what do you want? Mark asked, hearing his own frustration bleeding through. You want me to say I felt coerced? I didn't. You want me to file a complaint with HR? There's nothing to complain about. You want me to pretend I don't give a damn about you as a human being? I'm not that good of an actor. The words hung in the air between them, more honest than Mark had intended. Elaine's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across her features before she controlled it. You can't care about me, she said quietly. Not beyond professional respect. It's too complicated. Too late. Mark, I'm not saying I'm in love with you or anything dramatic like that, Mark interrupted, needing to say this before he lost his nerve. But you're right that helping you that night felt different than helping anyone else would have. And responding to your emails felt different than responding to any other colleague. And sitting in this conference room pretending we're just boss and employee when we both know we've seen each other's worst moments and most honest vulnerabilities. That feels like a lie. Elaine closed her eyes. This can't happen. I know. I'm your boss. You report to me. Any relationship beyond professional is ethically questionable at best and career-destroying at worst. I know that too. So what are you suggesting? Mark hadn't thought that far ahead. He'd just known that pretending Friday night's emails hadn't cracked something open between them was impossible. I don't know. But maybe we stop performing quite so hard. Maybe we acknowledge that we're human beings who've connected in some way, even if we can't or shouldn't act on that connection. That sounds like torture. It might be. But it's honest torture instead of dishonest pretending. Elaine laughed, the sound surprising them both. You have a very strange way of making terrible situations sound almost reasonable. It's a gift. She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. If we do this, if we acknowledge whatever this is, we have to be incredibly careful. No closed-door meetings without cause, no personal emails, no situations that could be misinterpreted. Agreed. And if it becomes too complicated, if either of us feels uncomfortable, we go back to pure professionalism. Okay. I mean it, Mark. Your career, your ability to support Lily, I won't jeopardize that because I'm lonely and you're kind. You're not jeopardizing anything. We're adults making conscious choices. Elaine nodded slowly, then seemed to shake herself back into her professional persona. I actually do have questions about your Q1 forecast. The revenue projections seem conservative given our current pipeline. Mark blinked at the abrupt shift, then followed her lead, pulling up the relevant spreadsheet. For the next 20 minutes, they discussed forecasts and assumptions and market conditions, their voices measured and analytical. But underneath the professional conversation, Mark felt something else, an acknowledgement, an agreement, a tentative step towards something neither of them could quite define. When he finally left the conference room, Jennifer was waiting by his desk. That was a long discussion about Q1 forecasts, she observed. It's a complicated quarter. I'm sure it is. She leaned against his cubicle wall. Are you okay? You look like someone who just agreed to something either really brave or really stupid. Possibly both. Jennifer's expression softened. Just be careful, okay? I know I encouraged you to acknowledge your feelings, but acting on them is a different thing entirely. We're not acting on anything. We're just not pretending quite so hard. That's a very fine line you're walking. I know. The rest of the day passed in a blur of work, but Mark found himself hyper-aware of Elaine's presence in the office. He noticed when she left for lunch, when she took a call with the door closed, when she stayed late reviewing contracts. Not in a creepy way, he told himself, just in a conscious way, the way you notice someone who matters. He left at 5:30 to pick up Lily from after-school care, grateful for the routine that pulled him back into the role that defined him most clearly. Father. Lily chattered about her day during the drive home, something about a science experiment with vinegar and baking soda, and Mark made appropriate sounds of interest while his mind churned through the implications of the morning's conversation. They were making dinner together. Lily's job was stirring the pasta sauce, which she took very seriously, when Mark's phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Wilson, this is Grace Chang from Hillcrest Elementary. I'm calling about Lily's Christmas pageant. Mark's stomach dropped. Is everything okay? Oh, yes, everything's fine. I'm just calling to confirm you'll be attending. We need a final head count for seating. Yes, absolutely. I'll be there. It's on the 18th, right? That's correct, 6 o'clock. And we're allowing each child to invite 2 guests. Will you be bringing anyone? Mark looked at Lily, who'd stopped stirring to listen with obvious interest. Just me, I think. Okay, wonderful. We'll see you then. After he hung up, Lily resumed stirring with exaggerated nonchalance. Madison's bringing her mom and dad and her grandma. Guilt twisted in Mark's chest. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I know it's hard not having... It's okay, Daddy. I know Mommy would come if she could. Lily's voice was matter of fact, the acceptance of a child who'd never known anything different. And you always come to my stuff. I always will, Mark promised, pulling her into a hug. Nothing's more important than you. They ate dinner and did homework and read stories, the comfortable rituals of their life together. After Lily was asleep, Mark sat on the couch with his laptop, ostensibly reviewing work emails, but actually thinking about Elaine's question from Friday night. Does it get easier? His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number that he somehow knew was Elaine. This is my personal cell, for emergencies only, not for everyday use, just so you have it. Mark saved the number, stared at it for a long moment, then typed, Understood. Thank you. Her response came quickly. How's Lily? Good, excited about her Christmas pageant. When is it? The 18th, 6 o'clock. She'll be an angel in the nativity scene. I'm sure she'll be perfect. Mark hesitated, then wrote, She gets 2 guests. It'll just be me. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before Elaine's response came through. That's probably for the best. Mark knew what she was saying, that her presence would complicate things, would raise questions, would cross lines they'd agreed not to cross. He knew she was right, but part of him wished she'd said something different, wished the world was simpler and bosses could attend their employees' kids' school events without it meaning anything significant. How was the rest of your day? He asked instead. Long. Contract negotiations with the Hartman Group went poorly. They want terms we can't possibly agree to. Will you have to walk away? Maybe. I hate walking away from deals, but sometimes it's the only move that makes sense. Mark understood she might be talking about more than just contract negotiations. Sometimes walking away is the bravest choice. And sometimes it's just giving up. There's a difference between strategic retreat and surrender. Is there? Because from here they look remarkably similar. They texted back and forth for another 20 minutes, the conversation dancing between work topics and personal observations, never quite crossing into dangerous territory but skirting the edges. Finally, Elaine wrote, I should sleep. Early meeting tomorrow. Good night. Mark, thank you for understanding what I was trying to say this morning about the power dynamics. I do understand, even if I don't entirely agree. I know. Good night. Mark set his phone down, feeling the strange mix of satisfaction and frustration that seemed to characterize all his interactions with Elaine lately. They were acknowledging the connection while maintaining boundaries, which should have felt like progress, but mostly felt like deliberately walking towards something while simultaneously building walls to keep it at bay. The next 2 weeks developed a rhythm. At work, Mark and Elaine maintained scrupulous professionalism, their interactions limited to necessary business discussions, always with doors open or colleagues present. But at night, after Lily was asleep, they texted. Never about anything truly personal, never crossing lines, just small observations about their days, questions about work problems, the kind of communication that could be explained away as collegial if anyone ever asked, but that felt like something more in the quiet dark of their separate homes. Mark told himself it was harmless. They weren't doing anything wrong. But he also knew they were playing with fire, getting closer to something that could burn them both. The Saturday before the Christmas pageant, Mark took Lily shopping for a new dress. She wanted something sparkly, with ribbons, and he let her choose from the clearance rack at Target, watching her spin in the fitting room mirror with pure joy radiating from her small face. These moments, normal, simple, unmarred by grief or complication, were what he lived for. They were loading bags into the car when his phone rang. Elaine. His heart rate picked up as he answered. Hello? Mark, I'm sorry to bother you on a weekend. Her voice was tight, stressed. But I need help and I don't know who else to call. What's wrong? My car broke down. I'm on Highway 87 about 20 miles outside the city. AAA says it'll be 2 hours before they can get here, and I have a meeting at 3 that I can't miss. Mark checked his watch. 1:15. Where exactly are you? She gave him the exit number. It was 30 minutes in the wrong direction from home, and he had Lily with him, and this was exactly the kind of situation that could look wrong if anyone found out. But Elaine's voice held an edge of desperation, and Mark made the decision before his brain could list all the reasons it was a bad idea. I'll be there in 30 minutes. You don't have to. I know. We're on our way. Lily looked up from her new dress, which she'd been examining with serious concentration. Where are we going? To help a friend whose car broke down. What friend? A friend from work. You met her once. Miss Prescott. Lily's face lit up with recognition. The lady who slept on our couch. Is she sick again? No, sweetie, her car just stopped working. They found Elaine standing beside her Mercedes on the highway shoulder, looking more disheveled than Mark had ever seen her. Her hair had escaped its usual perfect arrangement. Her expensive coat was smudged with dirt, and she'd clearly been crying, though she'd tried to hide it. Thank you for coming, she said, as Mark pulled up behind her car. I know this is an imposition. She stopped when she saw Lily climbing out of the back seat. Hi, Ms. Prescott, Lily waved enthusiastically. Daddy says your car is broken. Elaine's expression softened. It is. The engine just stopped working. That's sad. When our toaster broke, Daddy bought a new one. Will you buy a new car? Probably not. I'll get this one fixed. Mark popped his trunk. Let's get what you need from your car. We can drop you at your meeting and deal with the vehicle later. They transferred Elaine's briefcase and laptop, Mark acutely aware of how domestic the scene looked, him helping her with her things, while Lily chattered about her new dress and the upcoming pageant, like they were a family instead of a boss and employee navigating an increasingly complicated situation. The drive back to the city was surreal. Lily sat in her booster seat telling Elaine elaborate stories about school and friends and the injustice of bedtimes. Elaine listened with what seemed like genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at Lily's dramatic retellings. Mark caught glimpses of her in the rearview mirror, saw the way she relaxed around his daughter, the warmth in her eyes when Lily said something particularly charming. Miss Prescott, are you coming to my Christmas pageant? Lily asked suddenly. Elaine's eyes met Mark's in the mirror. Oh, I don't think... Daddy said I can invite 2 people and it's just him. You should come. I'm going to be an angel. That sounds perfect, Elaine said carefully. But I'm sure your daddy has other friends he'd rather invite. Nope, Lily said with 7-year-old certainty. Daddy doesn't have friends except Miss Patricia, and she has to work that night, so you should come. Mark felt his face heat. Lily, Miss Prescott is very busy. Actually, Elaine said quietly, I'd love to come, if that's all right with your dad. Mark met her eyes in the mirror again, saw the question there, the tentative hope. He knew what this meant. Elaine attending Lily's school event, being seen together outside of work, crossing another line in the series of lines they kept crossing and then pretending they hadn't. You're welcome to come, he said, but only if you want to. No pressure. I want to, Elaine said, and something in her voice made Mark's chest tight. They dropped Elaine at her office building with 10 minutes to spare. She gathered her things, thanked Mark again, then leaned into the back seat to say goodbye to Lily. I'll see you on the 18th, she told her. I'm looking forward to watching you be an angel. I'll be the best angel, Lily promised. Better than Madison, even though she says her costume is fancier. After Elaine disappeared into the building, Lily was quiet for a moment before asking, Daddy, do you like Ms. Prescott? Mark's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She's my boss, sweetheart. I work for her. That's not what I asked. Sometimes Lily's perceptiveness was terrifying. She's a nice person. Why do you ask? Because you look at her the way you look at pictures of Mommy, like you're happy and sad at the same time. Mark had to pull over because his eyes were suddenly blurry. He sat on the side of the road trying to compose himself while Lily waited patiently in the back seat. I loved your Mommy very much, he finally said, and I'll always love her. But she's gone, and I'm still here. And sometimes I forget that being here means I'm allowed to feel things about other people. Mommy would want you to be happy, Lily said matter-of-factly. She told me before she went to heaven. She said Daddy was going to be sad for a while, but that someday he'd be happy again, and that was okay. Mark turned to look at his daughter, this small, wise person who somehow understood things he'd been struggling with for 3 years. She told you that? Uh-huh. She said, love doesn't run out. You can love people who are gone and people who are still here. The heart just gets bigger. Mark unbuckled his seatbelt, climbed into the back seat, and pulled Lily into a hug, holding her tight while she patted his back the way he'd patted hers through countless nightmares and scraped knees. You're pretty smart. You know that? He said when he could speak again. I know, Lily said seriously. Madison says I'm the smartest person in our class. Mark laughed through his tears, kissed the top of her head, and climbed back into the driver's seat. As he pulled back onto the road, he felt something shift inside him. Permission, maybe, or acknowledgement. Lily was right. Sarah was right. Love didn't run out. The heart just got bigger. The question was whether his heart was big enough to hold the complicated feelings he had for Elaine Prescott, and whether admitting those feelings would destroy everything or build something new. He spent the rest of that weekend in a strange state of awareness, as if Lily's simple wisdom had switched on lights in rooms he'd kept deliberately dark. On Sunday, while making breakfast, he caught himself humming, something he hadn't done since before Sarah got sick. Lily noticed too, grinning at him over her cereal like she'd won some kind of victory. That night, after Lily was asleep, his phone lit up with a text from Elaine. Thank you again for the rescue today, and thank you for letting me come to Lily's pageant. I know it complicates things. Mark stared at the message, considering his response carefully. It does complicate things. But Lily wanted you there, and honestly, so do I. The 3 dots appeared and disappeared multiple times. Finally, we should probably talk about what we're doing. Probably. Not over text. No, not over text. Coffee sometime, outside the office? Mark felt his pulse quicken. Coffee was innocent enough, but coffee with intention was something else entirely. When? Tuesday morning? There's a place near the park. The Early Bird. 7:30? I'll be there. Monday at work felt different, charged with anticipation that Mark tried and failed to ignore. He and Elaine maintained their usual professional distance, but when their eyes met during a morning meeting, something passed between them. Acknowledgement, maybe, or promise. Jennifer noticed, raising her eyebrows at him when Elaine left the conference room. You're playing with fire, she murmured as people filed out. I know. And you're doing it anyway. Apparently. Jennifer shook her head, but there was fondness in her expression. Just don't get burned, okay? Either of you. Tuesday morning arrived cold and clear. Mark dropped Lily at school early, claimed he had a breakfast meeting to Patricia when she offered to watch her, and drove to the Early Bird with his heart hammering against his ribs. The coffee shop was quiet at this hour, just a few early risers hunched over laptops and newspapers. Elaine was already there, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups of coffee in front of her. I got you black with 1 sugar, she said as he slid into the seat across from her. I hope that's right. It's perfect. How did you know? I noticed things. She wrapped her hands around her own cup, her fingers elegant against the plain ceramic. Thank you for coming. Of course. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. Finally, Elaine spoke, her voice low enough that only Mark could hear. I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me. What I'm about to say isn't easy, and it's not something I admit easily. Mark waited, his coffee untouched. I'm attracted to you, Elaine said, the words coming out fast like she had to force them. Not just professionally impressed or grateful for your help. Actually attracted. And I have been since that night you took me home, maybe even before that. When you talked about Sarah, about love and dignity and staying present even when it hurt, I saw someone who understood things I thought only I understood. Mark's breath caught, but he didn't interrupt. But here's the problem, Elaine continued, her eyes fixed on her coffee. I'm your boss. I have power over your career, your livelihood, your ability to provide for Lily. Any relationship between us is automatically suspect because of that power dynamic. Even if we both want it, even if it's genuine and mutual and has nothing to do with professional advantage, people will assume the worst. HR will assume the worst.
And honestly, I can't blame them. So what are you saying? Mark asked quietly.
I'm saying I don't know what to do. I'm saying I have feelings I shouldn't have, and they're getting stronger instead of weaker. I'm saying that when Lily invited me to her pageant, I wanted to say yes more than I've wanted anything in months, and that terrifies me. Mark reached across the table, stopped just short of touching her hand. Can I tell you something? Elaine nodded. When Sarah was dying, she made me promise that I wouldn't shut down after she was gone. She said grief was necessary, but it shouldn't become my whole identity. She made me swear that if I ever met someone who made me feel alive again, I wouldn't run from it just because it scared me. I make you feel alive? You make me feel like maybe there's a version of my life that includes more than just surviving. And yes, that scares me. It scares me because caring about someone means risking loss again. It scares me because you're right about the complications. But I made Sarah a promise, and I've been breaking it for 3 years by staying numb and safe.
Elaine finally met his eyes. So what do we do? I don't know, but I know we can't keep pretending this doesn't exist. We could transfer you to a different department, remove the direct reporting relationship. That would solve the professional ethics problem, Mark agreed. But it doesn't solve the fact that we'd still be coworkers. It doesn't solve the gossip or the speculation or the assumptions people would make. No, it doesn't. Elaine took a shaky breath. Mark, I'm divorced. I'm 43 years old. I'm set in my ways and married to my career and terrible at the kind of vulnerability relationships require. My ex-husband left because I couldn't figure out how to be both successful and emotionally available. What makes you think this would be any different? Because you're not trying to pretend you don't have these issues. You're being honest about them up front.
Honesty doesn't fix everything.
No, but it's a start. They sat with that, the coffee shop filling up around them with the morning rush. Mark watched Elaine process, saw the conflict playing across her features, and realized that whatever happened next would change everything. There was no going back to professional distance, not after this conversation. They'd crossed a threshold, and the only choice now was whether to keep going or retreat. I want to try, Elaine said finally, her voice barely audible. But I need time to do this right. I need to talk to HR about transferring your reporting structure. I need to be transparent about the conflict of interest. I need to make sure we're not violating any company policies or putting your position at risk. Okay. And we have to go slowly. I can't jump into something serious when I'm still processing my divorce, and you're still grieving Sarah, and we both have careers that matter to us. I understand. Do you? Because I'm not promising anything, Mark. I'm not saying this will work. I'm just saying I want to try, and that's terrifying enough. Mark finally touched her hand, just his fingers against hers, the contact electric despite its innocence. I'm terrified too, but I'd rather be terrified and trying than numb and safe. Elaine turned her hand over, laced her fingers through his. They sat like that for a long moment, holding hands across a coffee shop table like teenagers, the gesture both simple and monumental. I should get to work, she said eventually, though she didn't move to let go. People will notice if I'm late. Let them notice. She smiled, the expression transforming her face. Your trouble, Mark Wilson. You have no idea. They separated reluctantly, gathering their things and walking to their cars in the early morning cold. Before she climbed into her newly repaired Mercedes, Elaine turned back. Thursday is the pageant, right? 6 o'clock. Hillcrest Elementary. I'll be there. You don't have to. I know, but I want to. She paused. Fair warning, I'm going to be terrible at this. I don't know how to be around kids. I'll probably say something awkward or forget that 7-year-olds don't care about quarterly earnings. Mark laughed. Just be yourself. Lily already likes you. How do you know? Because she has excellent taste. Elaine's smile was soft and genuine and entirely unpracticed. See you at work, Mark. See you at work. The next 2 days passed in a blur of anticipation and nervousness. At work, Mark and Elaine maintained their professional facade, though Jennifer cornered him Wednesday afternoon with pointed questions. You had coffee with her, she said, not asking. We talked. About work? Among other things. Jennifer studied his face. You look different, lighter somehow. Maybe I am.
Good. You deserve to be happy, Mark. Just be careful, okay? Office romances are complicated, even without the boss-subordinate dynamic. I know, we're being careful, but careful felt inadequate for what was actually happening. That night, Elaine texted, I spoke with HR today, confidentially. They're going to restructure your position so you report to Jennifer instead of me. It'll take a few weeks to implement, but it removes the direct conflict of interest. Mark's heart raced. That's a big step. I know, but if we're doing this, we're doing it right. No ethical shortcuts. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have to actually see if we work outside of crisis situations and late-night texts. We'll find out Thursday night. We will. I'm nervous. Me too. What if Lily decides she doesn't like me after all? Not possible. You have a lot of faith. In Lily's judgment? Absolutely. Thursday arrived with the kind of nervous energy that made concentration impossible. Mark gave up on productive work by 3 o'clock, leaving early to pick up Lily and help her get ready. She was vibrating with excitement, her angel costume laid out on her bed like sacred vestments. Is Miss Prescott really coming? She asked for the 5th time while Mark wrestled with her hair. She said she would. What if she forgets? She won't forget. What if her car breaks again? Then we'll go pick her up. Lily considered this, then nodded with satisfaction. Okay, but Daddy, you have to sit where I can see you. Madison says her dad sits in the back and she can never find him. Front row center, I promise. They arrived at Hillcrest Elementary 45 minutes early. Lily immediately whisked away by her teacher to join the other angels. Mark found himself standing in the slowly filling auditorium, checking his phone every 30 seconds, trying not to look like a man anxiously awaiting his boss who he'd maybe started dating, even though they hadn't actually been on a real date yet. You're going to wear a hole in that phone screen, Patricia said, appearing beside him with a smile. I thought you said I couldn't make it. I thought you had to work. I switched shifts. You think I'd miss Lily being an angel? She studied his face. You're nervous. What's going on? Nothing. Just want everything to go well. Uh-huh. And who's the woman you keep looking for? Mark felt his face heat. A friend from work. Must be some friend to have you this worked up. Before Mark could respond, he saw Elaine enter the auditorium. She'd changed from her usual business attire into slacks and a simple sweater, her hair down around her shoulders. She looked younger, softer, and Mark felt his breath catch when she smiled at him. I made it, she said, slightly breathless, like she'd been hurrying. Traffic was terrible, and I couldn't remember if you said 6 or 6:30, and I was worried I'd miss it. She stopped when she saw Patricia. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Elaine Prescott. Patricia Chen, I'm Mark's neighbor, and Lily's part-time guardian angel. They shook hands, Patricia's eyes sharp with assessment, and Mark felt the awkwardness of worlds colliding. Patricia knew about Sarah, about his grief, about the careful walls he'd built. Elaine represented something new and uncertain, and Patricia was clearly trying to figure out if she needed to be protective. Mark's told me about you, Elaine said. Thank you for everything you do for Lily. He says he couldn't manage without you. Patricia's expression softened slightly. Lily's easy to love, and Mark's a good father. He deserves support. The subtext was clear. He deserves support, not complications. Elaine seemed to hear it, nodding seriously. He does. They both do. The lights flickered, signaling 5 minutes to start. They found seats in the 3rd row. Front row had filled up, while Mark was greeting Elaine. Mark in the middle with Elaine on his right and Patricia on his left. He felt caught between his past and his possible future. 2 women who represented different versions of who he'd been and who he might become. The pageant was exactly as chaotic and charming as school productions always were. The kindergartners sang Jingle Bells with more enthusiasm than accuracy. The 3rd grade performed a surprisingly sophisticated dance routine. And then the 2nd grade presented their nativity scene, with Lily as one of 3 angels hovering over a manger that was really just a cardboard box. She was perfect. Her halo stayed on, her wings didn't fall off, and she delivered her one line, "Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy," with absolute conviction. Mark filmed the whole thing while his eyes blurred with tears, pride and love and grief, all mixing together in his chest. Beside him, Elaine was crying too. Not obviously, just silent tears sliding down her cheeks while she watched Lily glow under the stage lights. Mark reached over without thinking, took her hand, and she squeezed his fingers tight. "She's wonderful," Elaine whispered. "She is." After the performance, parents flooded the stage area to collect their children. Mark waded through the crowd with Elaine and Patricia trailing behind, finding Lily surrounded by her classmates, all of them talking at once about missed cues and costume malfunctions. "Daddy!" She launched herself at him, and he caught her, lifting her up despite her protests that she was too big for that. "Did you see? I didn't forget my line." "You were perfect, the best angel on that stage." "Really?" "Really, truly." Lily spotted Elaine over his shoulder. "Miss Prescott, you came." "I told you I would," Elaine said, and Mark saw her nervousness, the way she held herself carefully like she wasn't sure how to be around children. "You were magnificent up there." "Did you like my wings?" "Daddy helped me glue on the glitter." "They were beautiful. Very sparkly." "Do you want to get ice cream with us?" "Daddy always takes me for ice cream after programs." Mark's eyes met Elaine's over Lily's head. This was it. The moment where they either maintained careful distance or took the next step into whatever they were building. "I'd love to," Elaine said, "if that's okay with your dad." "It's more than okay," Mark said. Patricia begged off, claiming an early shift, but Mark saw the approval in her eyes when she hugged Lily goodbye. "You were spectacular, Angel Girl. See you tomorrow." The ice cream shop was crowded with other post-pageant families, the air sweet with sugar and childhood joy. They squeezed into a booth, Lily between Mark and Elaine, and ordered sundaes that were too large and too expensive and absolutely necessary. Lily dominated the conversation, recounting the pageant from her perspective with elaborate detail about who had messed up and who had done well, and how her teacher had said she was a natural performer. Elaine listened with what appeared to be genuine interest, asking questions about rehearsals and costume choices, and Mark watched them interact with something warm unfurling in his chest. "Miss Prescott, do you have kids?" Lily asked suddenly. Elaine stilled, her spoon halfway to her mouth. "No, I don't." "Why not?" "Lily," Mark said gently, "that's a personal question." "It's okay," Elaine said. She set down her spoon, considering her answer carefully. "I think I was always too focused on work to think about having children. And then I got older and it didn't seem like the right time. Some people become parents and some people don't, and both are okay. But wouldn't you like to have a kid? Kids are great." Elaine smiled. "You make a compelling argument. If you wanted to practice being a mom, you could practice on me. I'm very good at being a kid." Mark nearly choked on his ice cream. "Lily, that's not—" "Actually," Elaine interrupted, her voice soft, "that's one of the nicest offers anyone's ever made me. Thank you." Lily beamed, clearly considering the matter settled, and returned to her sundae with single-minded focus. Mark caught Elaine's eye, saw the vulnerability there, the fear mixed with something that might have been hope. They stayed at the ice cream shop until Lily started yawning, her post-performance adrenaline finally crashing into exhaustion. Mark carried her to the car while Elaine walked beside them, and there was something achingly domestic about the scene, the three of them together, full of ice cream and contentment, navigating the cold parking lot like they'd done this 100 times before. "Thank you for coming tonight," Mark said when they reached Elaine's car. Lily was already half asleep against his shoulder. "Thank you for inviting me, for letting me be part of this." Elaine reached out, gently touched Lily's back. "She's really special, Mark." "She is. And so are you." Before Mark could respond, Lily mumbled, "Miss Prescott should come over for Christmas. We make cookies and watch movies, and it's really fun." Elaine's eyes widened. "Oh, I don't think—" "We'd love to have you," Mark heard himself say. "If you don't have other plans." "I don't. My family's in California and we're not close. I was going to spend it alone with Chinese takeout and a book." "Then come to us. Christmas Eve. We make cookies in the afternoon, watch movies in the evening. Nothing fancy, just us." Elaine looked between Mark and the sleeping Lily, her expression unreadable. "Are you sure?" "Very sure." "Okay, then I'd love to." They stood there in the cold parking lot, Lily breathing softly against Mark's neck, Elaine's face soft in the streetlight glow, and Mark felt the strangest sensation, like his life was pivoting, turning towards something he couldn't quite see but desperately wanted to reach. "I should get her home," he said finally. "Of course. Good night, Mark." "Good night, Elaine." He watched her drive away, then carried Lily to his car, tucking her into her booster seat where she immediately curled up and continued sleeping. During the drive home, Mark's mind raced through everything that had happened: the pageant, the ice cream, Lily's casual invitation that had somehow turned into Christmas plans. They were building something, he and Elaine, something fragile and complicated and maybe impossible, but undeniably real. At home, he carried Lily inside and tucked her into bed, still in her angel costume, too tired to change her properly. She stirred just enough to mumble, "I like Miss Prescott, Daddy. She's nice." "She is, sweetheart." "I think Mommy would like her too." Mark's throat closed. "Yeah?" "Mm-hmm. Because she makes you smile the way you smile in pictures with Mommy, like you're really happy and not just pretending." Mark kissed her forehead, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. When she'd drifted back to sleep, he sat on the edge of her bed, looking at his daughter's peaceful face, and felt gratitude so intense it hurt. His phone buzzed with a text from Elaine. "I had a wonderful time tonight. Lily is extraordinary. You're raising an amazing human. She likes you too, wants you to practice being a mom on her, apparently." That was the sweetest and most terrifying thing anyone's ever said to me. "She has that effect." "Mark, about Christmas." "Second thoughts?" "No, the opposite. I'm looking forward to it more than I should be. That scares me." "Me too, but maybe scared isn't always bad." "Maybe not." They texted for another hour, the conversation wandering from the pageant to childhood Christmas memories, to their fears about what they were building together. Eventually Elaine wrote, "I should sleep, but I'm glad we're doing this, whatever this is." "Me too." "Good night, Mark." "Good night." Mark set his phone down and walked to his bedroom, pausing at the photo of Sarah on his nightstand. She was laughing in the picture, caught mid-joy, and Mark tried to imagine what she'd think of Elaine, of this tentative new thing growing in his life. "I think you'd like her," he whispered to the photo. "She's smart and kind and scared of getting hurt again. She makes me feel like maybe there's more to life than just surviving. I hope that's okay. I hope I'm not betraying you by wanting this." Sarah's frozen smile offered no judgment, and Mark chose to take that as permission. He climbed into bed, exhausted but unable to sleep, his mind churning through possibilities and fears and hopes he'd thought were dead. The next morning was Friday, and Mark arrived at work to find an email from HR scheduling a meeting for the following week to discuss organizational restructuring. Jennifer caught him at his desk before lunch, her expression carefully neutral. "Did you get the HR email?" she asked. "Yeah, do you know what it's about?" Jennifer's smile was knowing. "I might have been approached about taking on additional team members, including you." Mark felt relief and anxiety war in his chest. "And you're okay with that?" "Are you kidding? You're the best analyst we have. I'm thrilled." She lowered her voice. "I also know why this restructuring is happening, and I think you're both being smart about it, doing things the right way." "We're trying." "Good. Just don't screw it up, okay? I like both of you too much to watch this implode." The restructuring was finalized the following Wednesday. Mark's official reporting line changed from Elaine to Jennifer, removing the direct conflict of interest while keeping him in the same role. A few people noticed and commented, but the explanation of organizational efficiency seemed to satisfy most curiosity. That evening, Elaine texted, "It's official, we're no longer boss and employee." "How do you feel about that?" "Terrified, relieved, excited, all of the above." "So what now?" "Now we see if this actually works when we're not navigating power dynamics and professional ethics." "Want to find out over dinner tomorrow night?" There was a long pause before her response came through. "Like a date?" "Exactly like a date." "Okay, yes, I'd like that." Mark smiled at his phone, feeling like a teenager asking someone to prom. "I'll pick you up at 7. "I'll be ready." Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow and the kind of quiet that only winter holidays bring. Mark and Lily spent the morning baking cookies, chocolate chip, sugar cookies shaped like stars and trees, peanut butter with fork marks. The kitchen became a disaster zone of flour and sugar and food coloring, and Mark wouldn't have changed a single thing. Elaine arrived at 4, carrying a bag that clinked suspiciously like wine bottles and looking nervous in jeans and a sweater. Lily answered the door before Mark could, launching into an enthusiastic hug that made Elaine's eyes widen with surprise. "You came! We made so many cookies!" "I brought wine," Elaine said, showing Mark the bag. "And sparkling cider for Lily. I wasn't sure what was appropriate." "It's perfect," Mark said, taking the bag and trying not to notice how domestic this felt. How right. "Come in. Make yourself at home." The afternoon unfolded with easy warmth. They decorated the remaining cookies, Elaine proving surprisingly adept at piping frosting despite claiming she'd never done it before. Lily directed operations with benevolent authority, praising their efforts and only occasionally critiquing their technique. As evening settled, they migrated to the living room where Mark's modest Christmas tree glowed in the corner. They watched holiday movies, Lily's choice naturally, and ate too many cookies and drank wine while Lily had cider. At some point, Lily curled up between them on the couch, her head on Mark's lap, her feet stretched toward Elaine. "This is nice," Lily mumbled, her eyes drooping, "like a real family." Mark felt Elaine stiffen slightly beside him, but when he glanced over, she was smiling, her hand resting gently on Lily's ankle. "It is nice," Elaine agreed softly. Lily fell asleep before the movie ended, her breathing deep and even. Mark carefully extracted himself, lifted her, and carried her to bed. When he returned, Elaine was standing by the window, looking out at the snow falling in soft white curtains. "She's wonderful," Elaine said without turning around. "She is." "Mark, I need to tell you something." Elaine finally faced him. "I'm falling for you, both of you. And that terrifies me because I'm so bad at this. I don't know how to be in a relationship without sacrificing my career or my independence. I don't know how to be a mother figure to a child who's not mine. I don't know how to navigate loving someone who's still grieving someone else." Mark crossed to her, took her hands. "I don't have all the answers either, but I know that you make me want to try. You make me feel like maybe grief doesn't have to be my whole story. What if I mess this up? What if I hurt her? What if you don't? What if we actually figure this out together?" Elaine's eyes were bright with tears. "I want to believe that's possible." "Then believe it. We'll figure it out as we go." She kissed him then, soft and tentative and sweet, and Mark felt something in his chest unlock, some door he'd kept closed swinging open to let light flood in. When they pulled apart, Elaine was crying for real, and Mark kissed her tears away, tasting salt and hope and new beginnings. "Merry Christmas," he whispered. "Merry Christmas," she whispered back. They stood there in his living room, holding each other while snow fell outside and Lily slept peacefully down the hall. And Mark thought about Sarah's promise that his heart would be big enough for new love without losing the old. He thought about Elaine's courage in trying despite her fear. He thought about Lily's simple wisdom that love doesn't run out. And he thought that maybe, just maybe, they were all going to be okay. Elaine left around midnight after they talked for hours in quiet voices about everything and nothing, their fingers intertwined on the couch like teenagers figuring out intimacy for the first time. Mark walked her to her car through the snow, kissed her goodnight under the streetlight, and watched her drive away with a fullness in his chest that felt both foreign and achingly familiar. Christmas morning arrived with Lily bouncing on his bed at 6:30, her excitement infectious despite the early hour. They opened presents in their pajamas, modest gifts that Mark had carefully budgeted for, nothing extravagant but chosen with love. Lily's squeal of delight over a new art set made every dollar worth it. "Did Santa bring Miss Prescott any presents?" Lily asked suddenly, surrounded by wrapping paper and new treasures. "I don't know, sweetheart. She probably celebrated by herself this morning." Lily's face fell. "That's sad. Nobody should be alone on Christmas." Mark's phone buzzed with a text from Elaine, as if summoned by Lily's concern. "Merry Christmas. Thank you for last night.
I'm sitting here with coffee and Chinese takeout for one, and all I can think about is how much I'd rather be eating too many cookies with you two. He showed the message to Lily, who immediately declared, "We have to invite her over. We have extra ham and Daddy made too many potatoes like always." Mark hesitated, thinking about boundaries and not moving too fast. But then he remembered Elaine's face last night, the vulnerability in her admission that she was falling for them. He typed, "Lily insists you join us for Christmas dinner, 2 o'clock. Very casual. Say yes." Her response came quickly. "I don't want to intrude on your day." "You're not intruding. You're invited. There's a difference." "Are you sure?" Mark looked at Lily's hopeful face, thought about the empty chair at their table that had haunted every holiday for 3 years, and realized that maybe it was time to stop treating that emptiness like a shrine to grief. "Very sure. Please come." "Okay. Thank you. Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself." Elaine arrived at 2 on the dot, carrying a beautifully wrapped box that she handed to Lily with endearing nervousness. "I wasn't sure what you'd like, so I hope this is okay." Lily tore into the wrapping with enthusiasm, revealing an elaborate art kit, professional quality watercolors, brushes, sketch pads, the kind of supplies Mark could never afford. Her eyes went wide. "This is the fancy kind. Madison's mom is an artist and she has these." "I asked the store clerk what a creative 7-year-old might enjoy," Elaine admitted. "If it's too much, I can—" "It's perfect," Mark said, seeing Lily's joy. "Really perfect. Thank you." Dinner was chaotic and wonderful, with Lily chattering nonstop and Mark burning the rolls but nailing the ham. Elaine fit into their small family unit with surprising ease, laughing at Lily's jokes and helping clean up without being asked. They played board games afterward, Elaine proving fiercely competitive at Candyland in ways that made Lily shriek with delighted outrage. As evening approached and Lily started yawning, Mark caught Elaine's eye across the living room. She was smiling, really smiling, the kind of unguarded joy he'd never seen on her face at work. She looked younger, lighter, like someone who'd put down a heavy burden she'd been carrying for too long. "I should probably go," Elaine said reluctantly when Lily dozed off mid-game. "Let you two have your evening routine." "Stay," Mark said. "Just a little longer." After he'd put Lily to bed, Mark returned to find Elaine standing by the Christmas tree, studying the ornaments with quiet attention. Many of them were handmade, crafts from Lily's younger years, but scattered among them were older ornaments, delicate glass pieces that had been Sarah's. "These are beautiful," Elaine said softly, touching one gently. "They were Sarah's. Her grandmother gave them to her." Mark moved to stand beside her. "I almost didn't put them up this year. Thought maybe it was time to let go of some things. But you did put them up." "Lily wanted to. She said they're part of our family's story, and just because someone's gone doesn't mean we erase them." Elaine was quiet for a long moment. "Does it bother you that I'm here, in the space she used to occupy?" Mark turned to face her fully. "You're not in Sarah's space. You're in your own space. Sarah was my past, and I'll always love her, but you're my present, maybe my future. Those aren't contradictory things. Your daughter is very wise. She gets it from her mother." Elaine's eyes shone with tears. "I'm so scared of messing this up, Mark, of hurting Lily, of not being enough for either of you. You're already enough. You showed up. You tried. You're here on Christmas night when you could be anywhere else, and you're worried about being enough. Elaine, you're more than enough." She kissed him then, deeper than the night before, her hands in his hair and her body pressed against his in a way that made his heart race. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Elaine rested her forehead against his. "I should really go now," she whispered, "before I don't want to leave at all." "Would that be so terrible?" "No, but it would be fast. And we said we'd go slowly." Mark knew she was right, even as everything in him wanted to ask her to stay. "Okay, slowly. Thank you for today, for including me, for making me feel like I belong somewhere. You do belong. Here. With us." After Elaine left, Mark sat on the couch in the glow of the Christmas tree, feeling the strangest mix of contentment and anticipation. His phone buzzed with a text. "I'm home. Missing you already. Is that pathetic? Not pathetic. I'm missing you too. When can I see you again? Tomorrow? Lily has a play date in the afternoon. We could grab coffee or lunch or just sit in a parking lot and talk. I'm not picky. Lunch. Somewhere we can actually have a conversation. I want to hear everything about you that I don't already know. They met the next day at a small Italian restaurant tucked into a booth in the back where they could talk without being overheard. Elaine wanted to know everything about his childhood, his relationship with Sarah, how he'd managed after her death, what he dreamed about for Lily's future. Mark found himself sharing things he'd never told anyone, the grief and fear and overwhelming responsibility of single parenthood. In return, Elaine told him about her marriage, the slow erosion of intimacy as her career consumed more of her energy. She talked about the loneliness of success, how climbing the corporate ladder meant leaving people behind who couldn't or wouldn't keep pace. She admitted her fear that she was fundamentally broken when it came to relationships, that her ex-husband had been right about her prioritizing work over everything else. "But I don't want to be that person anymore," she said, her hand wrapped around her water glass like it could anchor her. "With you and Lily, I feel like maybe I could learn to be different, to want different things." "You don't have to change who you are," Mark said. "Your ambition and drive aren't flaws. They're part of what makes you who you are." "But they cost me my marriage." "They cost you a marriage to someone who needed you to be smaller so he could feel bigger. That's different than them being inherently wrong." Elaine looked at him with something like wonder. "How are you so understanding about this?" "Because Sarah was ambitious too. She was finishing her PhD when she got sick. She wanted to change the world through her research. I love that about her, the fire, the determination. I never wanted her to dim that light for me." "What was she studying?" "Environmental chemistry, specifically water purification systems for developing countries. She wanted to solve the global water crisis." Mark smiled at the memory. She used to say that if she could give clean water to even one village, her life would have mattered. "She sounds remarkable." "She was. And she'd like you, I think. She always respected people who refused to apologize for being excellent at what they do." They talked through lunch and into the afternoon until Mark had to leave to pick up Lily. As they walked to their cars, Elaine caught his hand. "I want to tell you something," she said. "I know we're going slowly, and I know we're still figuring this out, but I need you to know that this is real for me. You and Lily, you're not some rebound or distraction from my divorce. You're the first thing that's felt genuine in longer than I can remember." Mark pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "It's real for me, too." The weeks after Christmas fell into a rhythm that felt both new and comfortable. Mark and Elaine saw each other 2 or 3 times a week, always with Lily present at first, building a foundation of family rather than just romance. They went to museums and parks, had dinner at Mark's house, made elaborate breakfasts on weekend mornings. Elaine was learning to be around a child, getting better at the casual physical affection Lily craved, figuring out how to talk to a 7-year-old without condescension. At work, their new reporting structure made things easier. Mark worked for Jennifer now, and while everyone knew he and Elaine were dating, office gossip being what it was, the lack of direct authority removed the ethical complications. A few people made comments, mostly supportive, though Tom Bradshaw's snide remarks about Mark sleeping his way to job security earned him a private but firm conversation with HR. "People are going to talk," Jennifer told Mark over coffee one morning. "That's unavoidable. But you and Elaine did everything right. You were transparent, you restructured appropriately, and you're both still excellent at your jobs. Anyone who has a problem with it can deal with me." February arrived cold and gray, and with it came Lily's 8th birthday. She wanted a party at the skating rink, with her entire class invited, and Mark had been planning for weeks to make it perfect. The morning of the party, while they were setting up, Lily asked the question Mark had been dreading. "Is Ms. Prescott coming to my party? Do you want her to come?" Lily considered this seriously. "Is she your girlfriend now?" Mark's heart raced. They'd been careful not to label anything in front of Lily, not to move faster than she could handle. "Would that be okay with you if she was?" "I think so. She's nice, and she makes you happy." Lily paused. "But what about Mommy?" Mark knelt down to Lily's level. "Come here, sweetheart."
I want to tell you something important. He waited until she was looking at him. I loved your mommy more than anything in the world. I still love her, and I always will. But mommy's gone, and she's not coming back. And part of loving her means honoring what she wanted for us. What did she want? She wanted us to be happy. She wanted me to take care of you and make sure you grew up knowing you were loved. And she wanted me to be happy too, even if that meant caring about someone new. Mark touched Lily's cheek gently. Loving Elaine doesn't mean I love mommy less. The heart doesn't work like that. It just gets bigger. That's what mommy told me too, about the heart getting bigger. She was right. She usually was. Mark smiled through the emotion clogging his throat. So yes, Elaine is my girlfriend, and if you're okay with that, I'd like to invite her to your party. Lily threw her arms around his neck. I'm okay with it, Daddy. I like her, and I think maybe she needs us. Mark held his daughter, marveling at her emotional intelligence, her capacity for understanding far beyond her years. I think you're right. Elaine arrived at the skating rink 30 minutes before the party started, carrying a gift bag and looking nervous. Lily ran to her immediately, chattering about the party plans, and Mark watched Elaine relax into the interaction, getting better at this with each encounter. The party was beautiful chaos, 23rd graders on ice skates, numerous falls, lots of laughter, and a cake that was slightly lopsided but decorated with care. Elaine helped wrangle children, tie skates, and hand out pizza with the kind of determined competence she brought to everything. At one point, Mark caught her helping a shy little girl who'd fallen, speaking gently and encouragingly until the girl smiled and tried again. You're good at this, he told her later, while Lily opened presents. I'm terrified, Elaine admitted, but I'm trying. That's all anyone can do. As the party wound down and parents collected their exhausted children, Lily skated over to where Mark and Elaine stood at the rink's edge. Thank you for coming to my party, she told Elaine solemnly. It was better because you were here. Elaine's eyes got suspiciously bright. Thank you for inviting me. I had a wonderful time. Next year, will you help Daddy plan it? He's good at dad stuff, but sometimes he needs help with the fancy things. Mark laughed. Hey, I thought this party was pretty fancy. It was, Lily assured him, but Ms. Prescott knows about fancy, like the decorations and stuff. I'd be honored to help plan next year's party, Elaine said, and Mark heard the weight in those words, the promise of future, of presence, of staying. That night, after Lily was asleep surrounded by new toys and birthday cards, Mark and Elaine sat on his couch with glasses of wine, exhausted and happy. She called you my girlfriend today, Mark said, asked if that's what you were. What did you tell her? That yes, you are, if that's okay with you. Elaine set down her wine glass, turned to face him fully. It's more than okay. Mark, I love you. I've been scared to say it, scared it was too soon or too much, but I do. I love you and I love Lily, and I want to be part of this family you've built. Mark's heart felt too big for his chest. I love you too. I think I have since that first night when you showed me what vulnerability looked like and trusted me enough to help. They kissed, deep and slow and full of promise, and when they pulled apart, Elaine was crying. Happy tears, she assured him. I just never thought I'd have this. A family. People who want me around not for what I can do or what I can provide, but just for me. Well, you do. We want you. All of you, including the parts that are scared and the parts that are still figuring this out. I want to meet Sarah, Elaine said suddenly. Not literally, obviously, but I want to visit her grave, pay my respects, thank her for raising such an incredible daughter, and for loving you in a way that taught you how to love again. Mark felt tears prick his own eyes. She'd like that. We could go this weekend if you want. They went on Saturday, just the two of them, while Lily was at a friend's house. The cemetery was peaceful, snow covering the ground in pristine white. Mark led Elaine to Sarah's headstone, simple granite with her name and dates, and the words, beloved wife and mother, brilliant mind, beautiful soul. Mark knelt, brushed snow from the stone. Hi, Sarah. I brought someone to meet you. This is Elaine. She's important to me. To us. He felt Elaine's hand on his shoulder, grounding him. I think you'd like her. She's smart and driven and terrible at baking cookies, but she tries anyway. She makes Lily laugh. She makes me feel alive again. Elaine knelt beside him, her hand finding his. I never got to meet you, she said quietly, but I see you everywhere in your daughter, in Mark's capacity for love and patience, in the home you built together. She paused, clearly emotional. I promise to honor your memory, to never try to replace you, to love them both with everything I have. Mark pulled her close, and they knelt there together in the snow, paying respects to the past while building toward a future. It felt right, Mark thought, like Sarah was giving her blessing to this new beginning. Spring arrived gradually, winter releasing its grip with reluctant grace. Mark and Elaine's relationship deepened, moving from tentative new love into something more solid and sure. Elaine started keeping clothes at Mark's house, had her own key, showed up for dinner most nights. Lily called her Elaine now instead of Ms. Prescott, and the three of them had fallen into routines that felt increasingly like family. But Mark knew they needed to have the bigger conversation, the one about what came next. He waited until a quiet evening in April, after Lily was asleep, to broach the subject. I want you to move in with us, he said, the words coming out more bluntly than he'd intended. Elaine looked up from her laptop, surprise flickering across her features. That's a big step. I know. But you're already here most nights anyway. And it feels ridiculous that you're paying for an apartment you barely use while also storing half your wardrobe in my closet. It's not about the logistics, Mark. It's about what it means. For us. For Lily. It means we're building a life together. That's what I want. Is it what you want? Elaine closed her laptop, set it aside. Yes, but I'm scared. Of what? Of messing it up. Of Lily resenting me for taking up space in her home. Of you realizing I'm not cut out for this domestic life and regretting asking me. Mark moved to sit beside her, took her hands. Elaine, you've been part of our domestic life for months now. Lily adores you. I love you. The only thing that would change by you moving in is that you'd stop wasting money on rent. She laughed, the sound watery. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Do you want to wake up here every morning? Do you want to have breakfast with us and argue with Lily about bedtimes and help her with homework? Yes. Then move in. Be part of our family officially instead of just practically. Elaine was crying now, but she was smiling too. Okay, yes, I want that. They told Lily the next morning over pancakes. Her reaction was enthusiastic, shrieking followed by an immediate demand to redecorate the guest room as Elaine's office since she'd need space for her work things. Mark and Elaine exchanged glances over Lily's head, both marveling at how easily she'd accepted this new configuration of their family. Elaine moved in gradually over the next month, merging her life with theirs in ways both practical and profound. Her expensive furniture didn't quite fit the modest house, so they donated most of it, keeping only the pieces that mattered. Her extensive book collection filled shelves Mark built in the living room. Her professional wardrobe took over half the closet, mixing with his button-downs and Lily's dance costumes in a way that made the space feel complete. Summer arrived with long days and Lily's endless energy. They took a vacation to the beach, the three of them building sandcastles and swimming in the ocean and eating too much ice cream. Mark watched Elaine teach Lily to body surf, saw the joy on both their faces, and felt gratitude so intense it was almost painful. One evening, walking on the beach after Lily had gone to bed back at the rental house with a babysitter, Elaine stopped and turned to face the ocean. I want to tell you something, she said. About my divorce. Mark waited, giving her space to find the words. Michael left because he said I was incapable of real intimacy, that I kept him at arm's length emotionally while giving everything to my job. And he was right. She looked at Mark. I was terrified of being vulnerable, of needing someone, of admitting I wasn't completely self-sufficient. So I built walls and called it independence. And now? Now I'm still terrified. But I'm doing it anyway. Being vulnerable with you and Lily, letting you see the parts of me that aren't strong or competent or in control. That's what Michael wanted and what I couldn't give him. But with you, I want to try. Mark pulled her close. You're already doing it. Every day you show up and let us see you. Not the CFO or the successful executive, just Elaine
who burns toast and cries at animated movies and worries about being good enough. That's intimacy. That's vulnerability. I love you, she said. Both of you. More than I knew I could love anything. We love you too. They stood there on the beach as the sun set. Two people who'd found each other through crisis and built something beautiful from the wreckage of their previous lives. Mark thought about that night almost a year ago when he'd carried a drunk Elaine to his car, how terrified they'd both been the next morning, how impossible this future had seemed. Fall arrived with Lily starting third grade and Mark getting promoted to senior analyst. Elaine's divorce was finally finalized, the legal end of a marriage that had emotionally ended long before. She came home that day quiet and contemplative, and Mark gave her space to process. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Elaine found him in their bedroom putting away laundry. I need to ask you something, she said, her voice serious. Mark set down the clothes. Okay. That night, the first night, when I woke up at your house and asked if we'd slept together. I remember. You said no, that nothing happened, but I've always wondered, if I'd asked you to, if I'd been sober and willing, would you have said yes? Mark considered the question carefully. No. Not that first night. You were vulnerable and hurting, and I was a stranger you'd just met. Taking advantage of that would have been wrong, regardless of consent. And now? Now you're not a stranger. Now we've built something real. Now if you asked, my answer would be very different. Elaine smiled, slow and warm. Good to know. She crossed to him, wrapped her arms around his neck, kissed him with an intensity that made his breath catch. They'd been careful about physical intimacy with Lily in the house, keeping things appropriate and measured. But there was nothing measured about this kiss, nothing careful about the way Elaine's hands tangled in his hair, or the way Mark pulled her closer. I love you, she whispered against his mouth. I love this life we've built. I love waking up here and having breakfast chaos and arguing about whose turn it is to take out the trash. I love you too, even when you steal the covers and leave your work papers all over the dining table. She laughed, the sound full of joy. We're really doing this, aren't we? Building a family. We really are. Winter returned, and with it came the anniversary of that fateful night. Mark and Elaine were sitting on the couch one evening in mid-November when he realized the date. 1 year ago tonight, you ended up on this couch, he said. Elaine looked around the living room, so different now with her touches everywhere. Her books, her photos, her life intertwined with theirs. Best worst night of my life. Why worst? Because I was so lost. My marriage was ending, I was alone, and I'd drunk myself into oblivion trying to escape the pain. I woke up the next morning terrified I'd destroyed everything. And why best? Because you were kind when you didn't have to be. Because you saw me at my lowest and didn't turn away. Because that night led to this, to us, to this family, to a life I didn't know I wanted until I had it. Mark pulled her close. I was terrified that morning too. Thought I'd crossed some line that would ruin both our careers. We did cross a line, just not the one we thought. Elaine smiled. We crossed from being strangers to being people who cared about each other. Everything else followed from that. No regrets? Not a single one. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall outside their window, and Mark felt the kind of peace he'd thought died with Sarah. Different than what he'd had before. Not better or worse, just different. A new chapter in a life that had space for both grief and joy, remembrance and new beginnings. December arrived with holiday preparations and Lily's excitement reaching fever pitch. On Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after Elaine had first joined them for the holiday, Mark made dinner while Lily and Elaine decorated cookies in the kitchen. Their laughter filled the house, warm and bright, and Mark paused to watch them. This woman he loved, and this daughter who'd welcomed her, covered in flour and frosting and completely content. After Lily went to bed, Mark and Elaine stood by the Christmas tree, just as they had the year before. The ornaments were the same. Sarah's delicate glass pieces mixed with Lily's handmade crafts, and now a few that Elaine had contributed, small touches that marked her place in their family story. I have something for you, Mark said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Elaine's eyes widened. Mark? It's not what you think. Well, it is, but also it isn't.
He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver ring with a small diamond. I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. We've only been together a year and I know you need more time to be sure. Then what is this? It's a promise that I want forever with you, that when you're ready, I'll ask properly. That you're my family, Elaine. You and Lily, and I want the world to know it. Elaine was crying, tears streaming down her face as she looked between the ring and Mark's face. I'm ready now. What? I said I'm ready now. Ask me properly. Mark's heart was racing. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Mark, this year with you and Lily has been the best of my life. I don't need more time to know that this is what I want. You're what I want. This family is what I want. Mark knelt, still holding the box, his hands shaking slightly. Elaine Prescott, will you marry me? Will you officially become part of this family? Will you be Lily's stepmom and my wife and our partner in all the chaos and joy and everyday magic that makes up a life? Yes, Elaine said, pulling him up and kissing him through her tears. Yes, absolutely yes. Mark slipped the ring on her finger and they stood there holding each other, laughing and crying and marveling at how a night that started with crisis had led to this moment of pure joy. Should we tell Lily in the morning? Elaine asked. Definitely. She's going to be insufferable with excitement. I can't wait. They went to bed that night as an engaged couple, Mark holding Elaine close and thinking about Sarah, about love and loss and second chances. He whispered a silent thank you to his late wife for teaching him that hearts could be big enough for everything, grief and joy, memory and new love, yesterday and tomorrow. Christmas morning brought Lily's predictable early wake-up and her discovery of their news, which resulted in exactly the insufferable excitement Mark had predicted. She immediately began planning the wedding with elaborate detail, insisting on being the flower girl and suggesting that they get married tomorrow or maybe next week at the latest. We need a little more time than that to plan, sweetheart, Mark said, laughing. But why? You love each other. Elaine already lives here. What else is there to plan? She has a point, Elaine said, smiling at Mark over Lily's head. They settled on a spring wedding, simple and small, with just close friends and family. Patricia cried when they told her, hugging both of them and declaring she'd known from the start they were meant for each other. Jennifer organized an office celebration that was tasteful and supportive, with no awkwardness about the boss-turned-family member dynamic. The months between Christmas and the wedding passed in a blur of planning and normal life. Lily's school events, work deadlines, grocery shopping, and bill paying, and all the mundane tasks that made up a shared existence. Elaine proved to be terrible at wedding planning, getting overwhelmed by decisions about flowers and music. So Mark took over most of it while she focused on work and being present for Lily. They visited Sarah's grave together one last time before the wedding, the three of them bringing flowers and sitting in the spring sunshine. I wanted to tell you we're getting married, Mark said to the headstone, and I wanted Lily to have a chance to talk to you about it. Lily knelt by the grave, her small hand on the stone. Hi, Mommy. I miss you every day, but I'm okay. Daddy's okay too, and Elaine is really nice. She helps me with my homework and takes me shopping and loves Daddy the way you did. She paused, clearly emotional. I hope you're not sad that we have a new family now. Elaine says you're still part of our family too, that we can love you and her at the same time. Is that okay? The wind rustled through the trees and Mark chose to interpret it as Sarah's blessing. I think it's okay, Lily decided. I think you want us to be happy. Elaine knelt beside Lily, her own hand joining the small one on the stone. Thank you, she said simply, for everything you gave them, for teaching Mark how to love and Lily how to be brave, for making them who they are. I promise to honor that gift every day. They sat there together, this unusual family configuration, the widower, his daughter, and the woman who'd come into their lives through chaos and stayed through choice. Mark felt the past and future merge in that moment, felt Sarah's presence like a benediction on everything they were building. The wedding took place on a Saturday in May, in Patricia's backyard, which she'd offered with characteristic generosity. The ceremony was simple. Mark in a suit Lily had helped pick out, Elaine in a dress that was elegant without being ostentatious, and Lily as flower girl in a purple dress that matched the spring flowers blooming everywhere. They'd written their own vows. Mark went first, his voice steady despite the emotions churning in his chest. Elaine, a year and a half ago, you came into my life at your lowest moment, and I saw someone who was brave enough to be broken. You could have retreated behind walls of professionalism and pretended nothing happened, but instead you let me see you, really see you. That courage changed everything. He paused, gathering himself. You've taught me that hearts can be big enough for everything, that I can honor Sarah's memory while building a future with you, that grief and joy can coexist, that love doesn't run out, it just expands to hold everyone who matters. I promise to be worthy of your trust, to support your ambitions, to share both the burdens and joys of life, to be your partner in all things. Elaine was crying before she even started speaking, but her voice was clear when she began. Mark, I came to your company party that night feeling like a failure. My marriage had ended, I was alone, and I'd convinced myself that success and love were mutually exclusive, that I could have one or the other, but never both. She looked at him through her tears. You proved me wrong. You showed me that real partnership means celebrating each other's victories, not diminishing ourselves to make space for someone else. You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the foundation of true intimacy. She turned to include Lily. You both taught me what family really means. Not obligation or duty, but choice and commitment, and showing up even when it's hard. I promise to keep showing up, to keep being brave enough to be vulnerable, to love you both with everything I have for as long as I live. There wasn't a dry eye in the small gathering when they exchanged rings and kissed, sealing promises that had been building since that first night of unexpected crisis. Lily cheered loudest of all, throwing flower petals with abandon and declaring it the best wedding ever, despite having never attended another one. The reception was cake and champagne and Lily's elaborate toast that made everyone laugh. As the sun set and guests began to leave, Mark found himself standing with Elaine at the edge of Patricia's yard, watching Lily chase fireflies with some of the neighbor kids. Mrs. Wilson, he said, testing out the name. Elaine smiled. I'm keeping Prescott professionally, but I like the sound of that for everything else. Any regrets? Just one. Mark's heart skipped. What? That I didn't meet you sooner, that we wasted years being alone when we could have been building this. She leaned into him. But maybe we needed those years, needed to become people who could appreciate what we have. Maybe you're right. Lily ran over, breathless and happy. Can we go home now? I'm tired and I want to play with my new art supplies. Sure, sweetheart, Mark said, scooping her up despite her protests that she was too big. Let's go home. Home. The word had new meaning now, encompassing not just a physical space, but the people who filled it. As they drove through the evening darkness, Lily chattering from the back seat and Elaine's hand warm in his, Mark thought about the journey that had brought them here. From grief to hope, from crisis to family, from that terrifying morning when Elaine had asked if they'd slept together to this evening where they'd promised forever. Life, he'd learned, didn't follow clean narratives. It was messy and complicated and full of unexpected turns. The night he'd helped a drunk colleague had seemed like a potential disaster, a moment that could have destroyed careers and reputations. Instead, it had been the beginning of everything good that followed. Months turned into years. Lily grew from a precocious 7-year-old into a confident teenager who still talked to both her mothers, the one in the cemetery and the one helping her with algebra at the kitchen table. Elaine's career continued to flourish, Mark by her side as both partner and supporter, neither one diminished by the other's success. They added to their family, first a dog that Lily named Professor Wigglesworth, then eventually a son born when Lily was 12, and who inherited his mother's sharp intelligence and his sister's boundless energy. On the 5th anniversary of their wedding, Mark woke to find Elaine already up, sitting on their back porch with coffee and watching the sunrise. He joined her, bringing his own mug, and they sat in companionable silence. "Do you ever think about that night?" Elaine asked finally. "The party? Waking up on your couch?" "Sometimes. Usually on mornings like this when everything feels perfect, and I remember how easily it could have gone differently. I was so ashamed that morning, So convinced I'd destroyed everything. You built everything, Mark corrected gently. That night stripped away all the pretense and left just two people who needed each other. Everything else grew from that honesty. Elaine turned to him, her face soft in the early light. I love you. I don't say it enough in the chaos of daily life, but I do. You saved me that night, and every day since. We saved each other. Inside, they could hear their son beginning to wake, Lily's alarm going off, the household stirring to life. The ordinary chaos of family mornings awaited, breakfast to make, lunches to pack, schedules to coordinate. But Mark had learned that this ordinary chaos was actually extraordinary, that these mundane moments of shared life were the real magic. He thought about Sarah sometimes still, with love and gratitude for everything she'd taught him. He thought about Elaine's ex-husband and the divorce that had set her free to find something better. He thought about all the small choices and accidents that had aligned to bring them to this moment. A company party he almost didn't attend, a broken-down car, a daughter wise beyond her years, a woman brave enough to be vulnerable. Life was messy and unpredictable and sometimes painful, but it was also beautiful and full of second chances and capable of holding more love than seemed possible. The heart, as Lily and Sarah had both said, just got bigger. Standing on that porch with Elaine, watching the sun rise on another day of their life together, Mark felt grateful for every messy, complicated, beautiful piece of it. From crisis to family, from fear to love, from one night that could have been a disaster to a lifetime of mornings like this one. It was, he thought, more than enough. It was everything.